Chapter 241, Heavy Losses. Target locked, weapons preheated ready. The adjutants stared at the display, every datum tightening the knot in their throats. Fire! Boom. On the sea, the Vulcan cannon erupted first, spitting a huge fireball toward the Star Luo Empire fleet. The shell drew a glowing arc, then detonated with a thunderous roar, sending up a spray of seawater and choking smoke. Enemy bombardment. Dongxian's adjutant went pale, and a sharp alarm cut through the command room. All personnel, attention. Activate defensive arrays, disperse fleet formations, avoid concentrated fire. Fighter jets from the Western Legion launched in a glitter of light, trying to interpose a shield beneath the incoming storm. It was already too late. Second wave of rockets. 48 nautical miles from target, ready to fire. Hu Shatian tapped his console impatiently, unwilling to give the enemy a moment to breathe. Fire! Another volley of rockets streaked up and turned, precisely locking onto the Western Legion's positions. The continuous detonations were like the drumbeat of an apocalypse, unnerving everyone. The dueling empire had joined the fray. Nobody in the Douluo world could say exactly why, but once the Star Luo Empire had chosen war, the Douling fleet had every reason to lend support. Both were old empires from the original Douluo continent, driven from their homelands by the Sun-Moon Federation. Any chance to inflict serious losses on the Federation was an opportunity they would seize. The Douling fleet carried heavier shipboard armaments and the newest soul guidance technology from the Jishou Chamber of Commerce. Spirit Master teams were nearly invisible on deck. The ship's weapons had been upgraded for non-Spirit Master military warfare. Their entry made the battle instantly more complex and brutal. The Douling fleet has engaged, the adjutant reported with a note of panic to Dong Xian via soul guidance comms. Their coverage is broader than we expected. Dong Xian's face went ashen. Piloting the divine mecha Fierce Wolf, he kept intercepting the incoming rockets and calculating counters in his head. The enemy's commander had already shaped the tempo of the fight. Hammer the Northwestern Legion, draw out its top strength, and disrupt communications, stalling the response of the Western Legion on land until it could be overwhelmed. Order, all fleets disperse immediately to avoid concentrated fire. Overload all defensive soul guidance arrays. Resist as much as you can, Dong Xian ordered. All battleships, execute free counterattacks. His voice was tight with urgency. If the enemy concentrated their fire, annihilation was possible. The fleet could not be wiped out. If the enemy navy reached the coast with overwhelming strength, the Western Legion on land would be trapped. Under rapid commands, the fleet split into smaller groups and activated defensive soul guidance arrays. Dazzling light shields blossomed around the ships, attempting to form a protective line. Mobility and flexible tactics bought time, but could not erase the underlying disadvantage. Against the combined offensive of the Star Luo and Douling empires, they were vulnerable. Under the rocket barrage, the Western and Northwestern legions fought on the razor's edge. Dong Xian felt the pressure like a blade above his heart, ready to fall. Yet the Northwestern Legion's Mecha Division and Dong Xian's interceptions had managed to get the first contingent of the Northwestern Legion inside the Western Legion's nearest defensive line. In less than a minute, the rest of the Northwestern Legion would be able to enter with their soul guidance defenses active. Dong Xian hardened his resolve. He stepped out of the Fierce Wolf mecha. The fluctuations of a limit Douluo's spirit power spread out instantly. His spirit true body manifested. A green-faced, Fierce Wolf spirit howled and leapt into the sky to meet the last wave of rockets. The unattended divine mecha below continued to fire soul guidance shells in frantic interception. The machine, nearly touching the edge of sentience, showed a hint of self-awareness. Yin Moshang also ascended. As commander of the Northwestern Legion, he wasn't as strong as Dong Xian, but he was still a super Douluo in heavy battle armor. The Northwestern Legion's mecha department had already lost 2 squads. The density of the soul guidance rockets was simply beyond what a mecha force could indefinitely repel. Those who ascended understood the cost. Many had already prepared to sacrifice themselves to intercept a single rocket that could otherwise annihilate dozens of comrades. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion rolled across the battlefield, followed by a wall of smoke and flame. Dong Xian was thrown through the air, narrowly avoiding successive blasts. The mecha pilots of the Northwestern Legion felt as though they had descended into hell. Hundreds of mechas flared as they held back the inferno, yet some were blown out of the fight, reduced to nothing but drifting ash. All personnel, maintain formation. Yin Moshang's voice crackled through every comm. We do not give up. The battle cannot stop. Despite the bleak odds, the Northwestern Legion's morale did not crumble. Many mecha pilots threw themselves between explosions and fleeing comrades, giving others a chance to survive. Meanwhile, the combined fleets of the Star Luo and Dueling empires pressed forward like a rising tide. Rockets rained down. The Sun Moon Federation warships looked perilously near collapse beneath such concentrated fire. We have to find a way to break this firepower net, Dong Xian said, teeth clenched and eyes burning. Double the counterattack power, he ordered. We cannot let the enemy dictate the tempo. No sooner had he spoken than another detonation split the light, and the battlefield was swallowed by thick, choking smoke, an awful, pounding nightmare that made every heartbeat thunder. Chapter 242, Suicide Charge. Report, enemy fire is concentrating. Our defensive arrays are collapsing. Our fleet has taken heavy losses. The adjutant's voice trembled. Anxiety leaked from every word. All fleets, fall back southeast. Suppress enemy fire immediately. Dongxian made a snap decision. If they held any longer, the entire legion would be wiped out. He ordered the Sun Moon Federation ships to fall back and form a defensive line, hoping to blunt the incoming slaughter. Retreat did nothing to lessen the barrage. The combined fleets of the Star Luo and Douluo empires struck harder as the Western Legion folded in on itself. Like a predator closing on wounded prey, the enemy extended its claws into the shrinking defenses. Boom after boom shredded the air. Gunfire filled the sky, mingled with the metallic tang of blood and burned circuitry. Explosions churned the sea into a roiling graveyard where there had once been calm. Back at the Western Legion's coastal command post, Dong Xian and Yin Moshang, both battered and exhausted, stared at the situation report with sinking faces. The Northwestern Legion's supply lines had been obliterated. The Mecha Department had lost 80% of its pilots. Spirit Master divisions had lost 40% of their combatants. Ordinary soldiers, casualties stood at 57%. They hadn't even engaged the enemy in earnest yet. More than half the Northwestern Legion's support forces were already annihilated. Chaos settled over the Western Legion's command like a heavy fog. Dong Xian and Yin Moshang exchanged grave looks. The battle was spiraling into a direction they could not easily reverse. When will Federal Headquarters reinforcements arrive? Dong Xian barked. The adjutant swallowed and answered in clipped tones. Federal Headquarters has ordered the remaining Northwestern Legion units and the entire reserve fleet to deploy. Estimated arrival at the front in 1 hour. The Central Legion's mobile forces are en route, about 1 hour and 30 minutes. Chen Xinji is leading half of the War God Hall's War Gods. They're expected in 20 minutes. Relief flickered across Dong Xian's face, but did not take root. Reinforcements helped, but the battle could change in an instant. Right now, his priority was to steady the line, shore up morale, and shift tactics to meet whatever pressure the enemy brought next. Order all fleets to maintain communication. Once the enemy fleet comes into our battleship range, give free retaliation. Do not worry about carrier loads. Our enemy has superior numbers and soul guidance cannons. Our defensive soul guidance arrays won't hold them for long. We must reply hard enough to offset losses. Dong Xian's eyes burned with a hot red light. He knew the order he was issuing was tantamount to telling the ships, "You will likely die, but die with purpose." He swallowed the bitter truth. The Federal Conference had coddled politics and choked off the Jisho Chamber of Commerce, leaving the Star Luo and Douluo empires one technological step ahead. They paid for it now with blood. But, the adjutant began, enough counterfire can buy us a sliver of hope in this sector, Dong Xian interrupted, voice steady. We will not die here. The Western Legion must hold. Mingdu is behind us. If we retreat, they'll take the entire west coast and use it to move troops safely and continuously, he added, voice low and taut. No one in the room spoke. Fear still lived in their bones, but the greater threat rallied their resolve. They would hold, whatever it took. Prepare all coastal soul guidance rocket launchers. Preheat and be ready to fire on my command. No need to wait for further clearance. Every sailor and soldier sprang to their stations, igniting the last reserves of fighting spirit. Hu Tian, commanding the Star Luo fleet, didn't need to invent clever tactics. With technological and numerical superiority and dominance in combat aircraft, he had everything the battlefield demands. He barked his orders with the cold confidence of a man who knew he had the advantage. Overload salvo. Lock on to targets. I want the enemy fleet gone in 10 minutes. From his position, Hu Tian watched the Sun Moon ships try to keep pace while taking shells that barely dented the aggressors. He sneered inwardly. If you're suppressed technologically, why attack their strengths with your weaknesses? Let logistics worry about attrition. This wasn't the Jisho Chambers Armada. He felt no sympathy for their losses. The Star Luo and Douling fleets unleashed everything they had: Soul Guidance rockets, pulse laser batteries, Vulcan cannons, and heavier ordnance descended like a storm. The Federation fleet was caught in a furnace. Flames hissed into the sky, acrid smoke rolled over the water, and explosions punctured the horizon. The sea itself seemed to shudder under the onslaught. Report, their fire is too concentrated. Our defensive arrays will hold for a maximum of 6 minutes. The enemy is keeping at the extreme edge of our range. It's impossible to hit them effectively. The adjutant's voice was hollow with despair. Dongxian's hands curled into fists until his fingernails gouged his palms and drew blood. He didn't feel it. Only one thought held him. This sea sector must not be lost. Order, all fleets, execute a suicide charge, close with the enemy to bring them into our attack envelope, then fire every soul guidance projectile we have. Dongxian's command fell like a death knell. The adjutant went pale, but obeyed without hesitation, fingers flashing over the comm. Suicide charge? The words echoed around the command room like an accusation and a benediction. The plan was simple and grim. Push the ship's engines and overloaded defensive arrays to the brink, ram through the enemy's fire net, and give themselves up as living bait to get inside lethal range. It was a one-way ticket, an all-or-nothing gamble to exchange lives for a chance to strike back. Execute the order, Dongxian's voice boomed. Yes, the adjutant ground out, then immediately relayed the command to every warship. Chapter 243, The Energy Cannon That Erases Everything. On the sea, the Sun Moon Federation's fleet shifted course. Every warship's engines roared as they pushed to their limits. The formation cut through the waves like a razor, driving straight at the combined Star Luo and Douling fleets. Suicide charge, someone muttered. They're just handing themselves over. Hu Tian watched with a cold, incredulous frown. The world's combat command system was flawed. He'd known that, but this was beyond foolish. Still, he gave orders with calm precision. Activate underwater spirit tool torpedoes, set to fixed point detonation. All fleets' main cannons begin charging. The Star Luo and Douling fleets adjusted at once. Underwater spirit tool torpedoes slid away like coiled snakes beneath the surface, heading silently toward the oncoming ships. On deck, the main batteries began to hum, muzzles flickering with dangerous light as they drew energy. Dongxian's fleet from the Sun Moon Federation ran herself forward at full speed into the enemy's trap. Every engine shouted, hulls sliced white wakes. Soldiers gripped weapons with trembling hands. Spirit masters braced to pour themselves into their abilities. They knew the cost, knew how slim their chances were, yet obeyed without hesitation. Report, main cannons, energy charge complete in 4 minutes. An adjutant called. The enemy fleet is closing at full speed. They'll enter our firing range in 3 minutes, another voice said. Hu Tian curled a lip. Let them come. I want to see how long they last. He signaled the adjutant to stand by. Then, report, Star Luo Fleet Group has entered firing range. Report, Douling Fleet Group has entered firing range. When the enemy was within range, something beneath the waves erupted. The underwater spirit tool torpedoes reached their marks and, almost 10,000 at once, detonated under the Sun Moon Federation fleet. Water surged in monstrous columns, then collapsed. The defensive spirit tool arrays over the fleet, already nearly depleted, absorbed some damage but could not prevent the catastrophe. The shockwave whipped the sea into chaos. Warships pitched and rolled. Many rolled over, their hulls flipping and breaking on the waves. Men were hurled into the freezing water, screams swallowed by the roar. Ships are experiencing severe fluctuations, cannot lock on, unable to acquire targets, the fleet commander barked, panic in his voice. Faced with such violent suppression, they couldn't even get off a single coordinated strike. Report, main cannons fully charged, the adjutant announced. Hu Shatian gave the order with a single wave. Fire. As the battered Sun-Moon ships struggled to stabilize, a blinding white light cut the sky. A dozen, then 100, then hundreds of pure, unadorned beams. The energy cannon, a weapon bought at ruinous price from the Jishou Chamber of Commerce, mounted one to a warship. At full charge, it could fire up to 3 times before draining the ship's systems completely. The white beams swept like erasers across a blackboard, annihilating everything in their path. Where they struck, the sea opened in bottomless pits as if the ocean itself had been cleaved. The Sun-Moon warships, fragile against that power, were torn apart in an instant. No. Dongxian's cry was swallowed by the blast as his fleet became ash and splinters. Bloodshot, he watched helplessly while the energy cannon's light erased vessel after vessel. Despair, anger, and impotent rage filled him at once. There was nothing he could do against that technological supremacy. Report! Western Legion fleet, completely lost. His adjutant choked out. But the devastation did not stop at the fleet. The energy cannon's beams were long and unrelenting. The solid pillars of white light swept past the ruined ships and drove inland toward the coastal Spirit Tool artillery emplacements. Boom! The explosions hit like mountains collapsing. The beams struck the coastal batteries with brutal precision. Fortifications that had held for years went up in flame and smoke. Guns toppled, rocks and concrete disintegrated. The once sturdy defenses were shredded as if they had been paper. It's over. Dongxian whispered from the command platform, feeling the warmth leave his limbs. The Western Legion's fleet lay annihilated, the coastal defenses pulverized, and the enemy already closing for a landing. He felt every plan, every hope, unraveling. Report, enemy fleet is approaching the coastline rapidly. Estimated landing in 5 minutes, the adjutant said, his voice hollow. Dongxian's throat worked. He steadied himself and forced out an order with whatever authority he had left. All remaining troops fall back to the second defensive line. Prepare for the final stand. Yes, the adjutant replied and relayed the command. The mood in the command post was leaden. Everyone knew what a retreat to the second line meant, one more desperate defense before total collapse. On the flagship deck, Hu Shatian watched the coastline burning and smiled, a small, cruel curl at the corner of his mouth. He issued his own commands with cold efficiency. Order all fleet spirit masters and combat personnel to prepare for landing operations. Secure the coastline and establish a beachhead as quickly as possible. Remaining personnel stay aboard to allow weapons and systems to cool. After the assault forces make landfall, commence rolling heavy artillery barrages at 15 kilometers. Yes, the adjutant answered, and the order spread through the fleet. As the Star Luo and Douling ships closed in and troops readied to storm the shore, the western coast of the Sun-Moon Federation braced for an invasion born of merciless precision and devastation, an onslaught that had erased everything that had stood before it. Chapter 244, Honor and Glory, Vengeance and Protection. At sea, the fleets of the Star Luo Empire and the Douling Empire adjusted their formations and prepared to land. Warship hatches groaned open and countless soldiers and spirit masters poured out, boarding landing craft that sped for the coastline. Their eyes flashed with fighting spirit and killing intent, as if the dawn of victory were already visible. They had read, again and again, of their empire's former glory on the Douluo continent in old textbooks. They had tasted the humiliation of being driven from their homeland. Now those memories had hardened into a single consuming emotion: vengeance. They had waited too long for this moment. Now they would reclaim what they believed was theirs. Two empires, unfamiliar troops thrown together, moved with uncanny coordination, focused on the retreating Sun-Moon Federation forces on the shore. The landing craft cut white tracks through the sea and bore down on the coast. The Sun-Moon Federation's remaining troops were dug in on the second defensive line, but morale had hit rock bottom. Facing an enemy like a tide, despair filled their hearts. The mobile units from the Western and Northwestern Legions were broken and battered, mere remnants of their former strength. Prepare to fight. Dongxian stood on the command platform of the second line. His voice was hoarse but steady. He knew this might be the last battle he would command, but he refused to give up. Even a sliver of hope demanded everything from him. All Spirit Master units, prepare to release your spirit avatars and resist the enemy's assault with all your strength. Mecha Department, initiate self-destruct protocols. If surrounded, detonate to delay the enemy. Regular infantry, hold your positions. Do not let them break through. His orders sounded like the last war drum, trying to stir a fighting heart in every soldier. But the reaction was muted. Looking out over the dejected, despairing ranks, Dongxian felt the helplessness settle in anew. Morale had collapsed, and the will to fight was fragile. Still, a commander cannot surrender to despair. He pushed harder. Brothers, his voice carried across the line through the spirit guide amplifier, hoarse but burning like a small torch in the dark. I know you are exhausted, afraid, and full of despair, but remember, behind us is Mingdu, our home. Our families, friends, and neighbors wait for us there. If we fall here, the enemy will march straight in. Our city will be ruined, and our loved ones will suffer. His words spread through the ranks like a slow, warming current, stirring responsibility and courage. We may die, but our deaths will buy our home's safety. Our sacrifice will make the enemy pay. We are not cowards. We are the warriors of the Sun-Moon Federation. We fight to protect. We fight for our homes. We fight for the future. Dongxian's voice rose, every syllable thrown like a blade into the gloom. The Sea God Legion will be here in 10 minutes. The Central and Northwestern Legions are rushing to reinforce us. We cannot let them down. General Yin Moshang and I will stand with you. So long as we remain, the formation holds. Even if we fall, the formation will not break. If I die, General Yin Moshang becomes the commanding officer here. If he falls, Lieutenant General Bai Minghui assumes command. If the army commander falls, the deputy commander takes over. If the deputy falls, the brigade commander steps up. The thunder of his voice drove into the soldiers' hearts. The low morale that had gripped them flickered, then flamed. Fighting spirit returned to their eyes. They gripped their weapons tighter, staring into the distance as if they could already see the coming victory. For our home, for the Federation, they answered in a roar that shook the air. They knew this battle allowed no retreat, and still they chose to stand. Dongxian scanned the line. Every detail counted. Yin Moshang, hold the left flank. Stop the enemy's advance. Understood, Yin Moshang replied, determination bright in his eyes as he led his troops to the forward edge. Bai Minghui, take the right. Do not let them through. Yes, Bai Minghui answered and moved his forces into position. Dongxian drew a deep breath, then raised his hand and pointed toward the approaching enemy. All officers and soldiers, prepare for battle. At his command, the defense snapped to life. Spirit Masters released their spirits. Mecha pilots climbed into their machines. Warriors tightened their grips on ion laser rifles and spirit guide weapons, eyes locked on the shore. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. The enemy is here! A shout rang out as the allied landing forces of the Star Luo and Dueling Empires hit the beach. Landing craft surged forward like a dark wave. Dense ranks of soldiers and spirit masters leaped out and charged, eyes blood bright with the promise of revenge. They formed up quickly. Star Luo or Do Ling, it didn't matter. Amid the crush, everyone obeyed the nearest commander, and battle formations coalesced. Behind them, warships thudded out rolling barrages, artillery rocked the water. The Allied forces charged beneath the roar. The defensive spirit guide array flashed into being on the beach, a shimmering barrier, but tactics meant little in that moment. The thought was simple and brutal. Annihilate them all. Break the line. Take Mingdu. Wash away humiliation with blood. Aerial combat craft screamed overhead. Fleet groups fired continuous barrages. On the shore, soldiers poured forward with a single, terrible purpose. The two sides collided in a storm of gunfire and spirit energy, and the battle for Mingdu began in earnest. Chapter 245, Reinforcements Arrive. At the sun. Moon Federation's second defensive line, the enemy's heavy artillery turned the sky into a roiling thunderhead. The energy shield generated by the Spirit Tool defense array trembled under the barrage. No direct hits broke it, but the concussions and shockwaves constantly battered the soldiers behind it. Under the covering fire, Some of the rear guard left behind by Dongxian were blown apart before they could even raise their heads, flesh and blood thrown against the sand and hull. So close! So close! Charge! The shout rose like a living thing, desperate and fierce. Hold the line! Hold the line! When the vanguard of the Starluo Douling allied force saw the same merciless red eyes mirrored on the Sun Moon Federation's defenders, the battlefield distilled down to a single command: kill! The roar of slaughter ripped along the coast. The combined fleets of the Star Luo Empire and the Douling Empire surged like a tide against the Federation's second line, while the Federation troops rooted themselves like stone. The collision was instantaneous and catastrophic. Spirits flared and spirit abilities detonated like fireworks. Each clash sent violent energy ripples through the air. Mecha pilots wrestled gargantuan machines into the fray, hulking frames trampling infantry and ripping into enemy spirits. Artillery and laser fire braided into deadly nets. Ordinary soldiers gripped spirit tool weaponry and fired until their arms trembled, trying to smother the charge with pure volume. There were no rules here, only survival. Spirit masters tore through armored mecha and shredded human ranks. Mechas blasted holes through waves of attackers. Infantry concentrated fire to take down spirit masters and topple towering machines. The slaughter exceeded any mind's rehearsal. Centuries of peace had left even elite units short on battle-hardened veterans. Months of drills dissolved under the pressure. In combat, every soldier's instinct narrowed to a single purpose: aim, unleash, survive. The meat grinder formed in an instant. The air tasted of blood and gunpowder. Limbs littered the ground. The sand drank deep until it ran crimson. Each second consumed lives. Every moment birthed new wails. Dongxian stood on the command platform, face set, watching with a tightness in his chest. Pain and anger churned inside him, but he could not allow himself to waver. A commander must be calm, responsible for every soul on that line. "Report," cried an adjutant, voice taut. "The left flank is under severe pressure. General Yin Moshang requests reinforcements." Dongxian's jaw clenched. "Send the reserves to the left. Hold that flank at all costs." "Yes, sir." The adjutant moved, relaying orders. Still, even after the reserves were committed, the situation did not improve. How could a single legion hold against the combined naval might of two empires, especially when that legion had already given so much? Dongxian's teeth ground together. He deployed the divine mecha, Fierce Wolf. Comparable in power to a limit Douluo, the Fierce Wolf shifted the local balance the moment it entered. But the Douling Empire had also unleashed a super Douluo who moved with lightning speed. The duel between those two titans cleared the surrounding battlefield of everything else. Their clashing energies vaporized friend and foe alike. Under Dongxian's will, the Fierce Wolf tried to nudge the fight toward the denser allied forces, but the opposing Super Douluo saw the ploy. Every time the Fierce Wolf maneuvered, he pretended to threaten the weakest point on the Federation's left, forcing Fierce Wolf into a deadlocked duel. Minutes bled into one another. 1 minute. 2. 5. A thick, bloody mist rose from the battlefield, blotting the scene into a red haze. From high above, the full scope of fighting was obscured. Only flashes of spirit light and explosions cut through the fog to briefly expose a corner of carnage. The air itself felt heavy, laden with coppery odor and the sting of cordite. Dongxian gripped the platform rail until his knuckles blanched. Vision blurred by the haze, he felt the lines slip against him, the pressure mounting on the left, the right beginning to sag. "Report," demanded another voice. "The right flank is faltering. General Bai Minghui requests reinforcements." Dongxian's face went stone. He knew the reserves were already committed to the left. There were no more troops to spare. He inhaled and gave a low, strained order. "Concentrate every remaining unit on the central defensive line. Prepare for a last stand." Beneath the blood-masked sky, both sides were holding back their top-tier spirit masters. No one would risk their strongest until the other did the same. When all the heavy hitters spilled onto the field, the outcome would likely hinge on those titans. The stalemate felt like a waiting wound. Then the sound came, a great rumble from the heavens. Through the crimson mist, streaks of fire erupted as previously untouched warplanes tore the sky open. "Mobile forces," someone shouted. "The Sea God Legion and Central Legion have arrived." There weren't many aircraft, but those that came were the cutting edge, pilots and units chosen from the best of the best. In an instant, the strained front brightened. Voices crackled. Chen Shinji, engage in the sky. Unsi, this is my fight. If you can fly, then fly. Spare me the posturing. Dongxian's face finally showed a flicker of hope. The moment of truth, he told his aide. I'll join the fight. You take overall command. The Fierce Wolf's pilot answered in kind. The suppressed fury of a Limit 99 Douluo burst free. He launched into the high-altitude fray with a roar. Above, Super Douluo and Limit Douluo from both the Douling and Star Luo empires ascended, ready to decide which would end first, the desperate melee on the ground or the titanic duel in the sky. Far out at sea, Hu Shatian watched without a ripple crossing his face. Beside him, Di Zhanghu appeared quietly. Reporting, Marshal, Di Zhanghu said. Command of the Douling Empire's fleet has been secured. No one knew how he had managed to seize control of such a massive Douling force. The question hung in the air, ominous, unresolved, while the renewed fighting above and below threatened to decide everything in a single brutal instant. Chapter 246, Cruel, Excellent. Hu Shatian's fingers tapped the command console in a steady rhythm. The metallic clicking sounded impossibly loud in the hush of the bridge. He turned and stared through the viewport at the blood-misted coastline, a cruel smile on his lips. Then let this decisive battle be even more brutal. My orders, fire the soul-guided suppression bombs, 2 volleys. Then switch to heavy artillery, 3 volleys. Target the Sun-Moon Federation's second defensive line. The adjutant froze, shock and disbelief written across his face. But our people are there too. How many do you think will survive this battle? Hu Shatian asked coldly. Chen Xinjie, Dongxian, Yin Moshang, do you think it's any easier for them up there? He sneered instinctively, eyes hard with ruthless resolve. Execute the order. Yes, sir. Compelled by his authority, the adjutant carried out the order at once. The signalman roared. Tens of thousands of soul-guided shells in the fleet finished charging, forming an astonishing net of firepower. The vast, dark fleet on the sea fell into a grim silence. 300 conical projectiles streaked with purple-black markings tore through the blood mist, their tail thrusters spitting an eerie indigo-blue flame as they sped toward the fiercest section of the battlefield. Spirit? Suppressor? Came the stunned voice over Yin Moshang's mech channel. The 97th level Super Douluo watched helplessly as his spirit true body flickered like a faulty light. Tens of thousands of spirit masters along the defensive line collapsed at once, spirit rings dying one after another as their spirit power drained away. Their abilities failed. They could no longer summon spirit abilities. Boom! The purple-black soul-guided suppression bombs detonated in midair, like the sigh of a god of death. A blinding flash gave way to a choking purple mist that rolled across the front line. Every spirit master caught in it changed color as their spirit rings dimmed and their spirit power dried up like a drained well. What's happening? My spirit power. It's gone, someone cried. Spirit true body cannot be maintained. Chaos erupted. The Sun-Moon Federation's Spirit Master troops, once proud and blazing with spirit abilities, were suddenly extinguished under the mist's erosion. The defensive line, built around Spirit Masters, teetered on collapse. Damn it! It's the Star Luo Empire's soul-guided suppressor. Dongxian's eyes bled red as he watched his Spirit Masters be cut down, unable to retaliate. Although his status as a Limit Douluo protected him from total loss of spirit power, he felt it greatly weakened. First, kill the Spirit Masters, then destroy the mechs. The Star Luo soldiers roared, surging forward to slaughter the helpless defenders. Blood soaked the ground, screams rose and fell. At that moment, the Sun-Moon Federation's defensive line shattered. Fire! As the two great fleet groups issued the command, a heavy silence fell over the Federation command ship. Then countless shells tore into the sky, whistling toward the second defensive line. Each projectile struck with surgical precision, aimed at soldiers desperately fighting and at the titled Douluo who had risked everything to maintain a shred of spirit power. When the heavy artillery slammed down, flesh and blood stood no chance. At the end of one projectile's parabolic arc, a blinding red light flashed across Bai Minghui's mech monitors. The right-wing commander made a split-second decision under Article 17 of the Federation Battlefield Regulations, his 12-meter, bedrock, 3, Mech leapt sideways, presenting its alloy frame as an anti-blast wall for the 13 tile, titled Douluo behind him, who had just regained some spirit power. Then the world became a furnace. Over a dozen 3-ton A7-class incendiary bombs struck the mech's chest and detonated. Bai Minghui's last consciousness clung to the moment the scorching blast ripped through his neurons. His exploding mech shattered into thousands of whirling death flecks that turned the soldiers he had tried to protect into bloody shrapnel. 200 meters away, Yin Moshang watched 17 friendly signal markers wink out on his display. A metallic taste of rust rose in his throat. Second defensive line, coordinates B7 to D3, heat signatures terminated. The staff officer's voice crackled like a broken phonograph. Confirmed. Confirmed. Major General Bai Minghui, vital signs terminated. A sea wind full of burning polymer debris swept past the command post. Dong Xian stared down at the holographic sandbox before him as blue points of light blinked out at an alarming rate. Each extinguished light corresponded to a real scream from the bloody grinder on the shoreline. As the third volley of shells began to rip through the sky, the fierce wolf Douluo realized the nightmare before him. Would the incoming barrage crush his soldiers, or would the suppression field finish draining his spirit core first? Chen Xinjie. Dong Xian's roar split the clouds. The call made the sea god Douluo, who was locked in combat with Unsea above the clouds, tremble. The Federation's god of war was half submerged in blood. His opponent NC and a limit Douluo from the Douling Empire were struggling too. In the nearshore range, Chen Xinji's power exceeded all expectations. Everyone could only delay the inevitable. "When the hell is your support arriving?" Dong Xian bellowed. The only answer was the shriek of the second wave of soul-guided suppression bombs. This impact fell precisely on the command post where the fierce wolf Douluo had established his post. Dong Xian looked at his outstretched hands. Where the 9th spirit ability light should have burned brightly, it now flickered erratically like a dying bulb. Even worse, he saw Hu Shatian's fleet shifting formation, the dark muzzles that had been trained on the coast now aimed upward. Retreat. Evacuate the west coast. Fall back and await reinforcements. Construct defensive fortifications at the 3rd defensive line. Dong Xian sent the order through spirit resonance, but his words were cut short. A scorching white beam, over 100 meters wide, lanced through the clouds, a synchronized energy cannon volley. 7 titled Douluo of the War God Hall, engaged high above, had no time to react and were vaporized in the absolute torrent of energy. Chen Xinji unleashed Sea God's immeasurable at the last possible moment, buying only a brief, bitter resistance. Retreat. Everyone, retreat. Leave some sprouts for our Western Legion. The commander-in-chief's order unleashed the fear clamped in every soldier's chest. Dong Xian's command sliced through the last shred of resistance. Retreat. Fall back to the 3rd defensive line. Men abandoned weapons. Mech pilots severed neural links and leapt free of cockpits. Spirit masters dragged their exhausted bodies and stumbled toward the rear. The once orderly defensive line dissolved in an instant, leaving only sporadic gunfire and the wails of the dying. The allied forces of the Star Luo Empire and the Douling Empire did not pursue. The retreat was allowed, but escape held no true safety. Waiting for the fleeing soldiers was the 3rd volley of heavy artillery already primed and aimed at the retreat path. The slaughter was far from finished. Chapter 247, The Dramatic End. Boom! Shells slammed into the fleeing crowd. Explosions swallowed countless lives. The ground shook, and blood and flesh sprayed everywhere, turning the retreat into a corridor of death. Monsters! Yin Moshang's eyes were red with rage as he watched the remaining soldiers consumed by artillery fire. He spun and shouted at Dong Xian, "We can't retreat! Retreating is death! We have to stop their landing troops!" Dong Xian didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the sea. The Star Luo Empire and Douling Empire fleets were advancing slowly, and dense waves of troops were beginning to land. Their target was no longer only the west coast, it was Mingdu itself. On the flagship's command deck, Hu Shatian set down the long-range spirit tool in his hand. "Report," he said. "The Sun Moon Federation's remaining forces have dispersed, and our landing troops are moving ashore. The War God Hall's titled Douluo have suffered over half their number," the report came. "Chen Xinjie is severely wounded. Dongxian and Yin Moshang are in critical condition. Excellent. Hu Shatian curled his lips, showing no mercy. He turned to Dizangu. What's the Empire's stance? The Douling Empire has agreed to assume full command of the fleet, Dizangu replied. Although Star Luo's high command is displeased, Unsea's death removed their top combat strength. They dare not disobey our orders. Hu Shatian sneered. Then tell them to quiet down and keep sending reinforcements. Explosions still thundered along the coastline, but the balance had already tipped. When the smoke from the third barrage cleared, the land around the west coast's second defense line was a scorched wasteland. Twisted metal and wreckage lay mixed with mangled corpses. Spirit masters, dulled by the suppression field of the spirit tools, huddled in shell craters like snakes stripped of fangs. The sea breeze carried a salty reek of blood into the ruined command post. Dongxian's uniform hem was soaked in blood. His left arm had been largely torn away by shrapnel. He pressed his right hand to the communicator and rasped, "Report, status of the third defense line." Broken static hissed, then a tearful voice answered, "Report, Commander. All heavy firepower is destroyed. Only 3 spirit tool array generators remain. Mecha department is completely wiped out." The surviving officers glanced instinctively at the holographic sand table. The third defense line, marked by a green dotted line, flickered like a dying patient's ECG. That position had been nothing more than a temporary logistics transfer station, with a hastily dug trench and 20 old coastal defense cannons. Click! The metallic rhythm of boot heels on glass made everyone flinch. Yin Moshang's mecha, Mountain Imp, dropped to one knee. The Sea God Legion emblem on its chest armor was spattered with blood. From behind its cracked faceplate, the voice of the 97th level Super Douluo spoke, hoarse and urgent. Chen Zhou used his 9th spirit ability to block the fleet's main cannon, but Enchi tore his spirit core before he died. An alarm suddenly screamed through the communications channel. A staff officer slapped the monitoring screen, panicked. High energy reaction detected. Enemy fleet, recharging main cannons. Dongxian's pupils constricted. He knew exactly what that meant. Those energy cannons, capable of vaporizing warships with a single shot, would fire again at the fleeing survivors. Without spirit tool array protection, and with the mecha department destroyed, the soldiers stumbling along the retreat route stood no chance. Transmit my final order. Fierce Wolf Douluo ripped off his shattered epaulet. All spirit masters who can still move, assemble at coordinate C7 and unleash the spirit fusion ability. Blood Moon Sky Wolf. The officers froze. That banned technique required 9 or more spirit Douluo to sacrifice their lives. It was reserved as a last resort mutual destruction measure in the Federation's military code. What? Dongxian's blood-streaked mouth parted. Didn't you all just sign the organ donation releases? 3 seconds of silence, then 17 hands slammed down on the command console. On the enemy flagship, Hu Shatian crushed his tactical pen. The holographic display showed a crimson beam of light rising from the battlefield. 9 figures burned inside it, their bodies disintegrating into a stream of particles that coalesced into a blood-colored wolf head more than 300 meters wide. When the wolf opened its maw, it swallowed the moonlight over the sea. Evasive maneuvers. Dizangu roared, but alarms drowned him out. The blood wolf hit the Star Luo fleet without any explosion or shockwave. Metal that touched the red light quietly corroded and dissolved. Spirit rings on spirit masters went out one by one like candles snuffed. 7 battleships turned to molten red slag in 10 seconds. The tens of thousands of tons of sinking steel churned the waves and shattered the landing formation. Report, Second Fleet flagship armor compromised. Hu Shatian slammed his fist on the console. He had underestimated these cornered beasts. The sacrificial spirit fuse should have scattered their souls, but these madmen had attached their residual spirits to the corrosive energy. Now the whole sea brimmed with runaway spirit power turbulence. The fleet's precision instruments failed. "What about the landing troops?" he demanded hoarsely. On the holographic map, the green dots marking the landing soldiers flickered irregularly. Of the original 20,000 Vanguard troops, fewer than 4,000 life signals remained, and they were trapped on reefs at the edge of the corrosive zone. Tell them to clear the battlefield. Hu Shatian turned toward the hatch. Prepare. A sharp whoosh cut him off. A golden beam streaked down from the clouds, striking a reef 3 nautical miles ahead of the flagship. In the exploding gold light, the phantom of 9 golden spirit rings, rotating like gears, was visible. This is Zhanghu's Adam's apple bobbed. Sea god Douluo's. Chen Zhou isn't dead. Hu Shatian's face finally changed. Order a full retreat. But it was too late. A second golden beam struck in the center of the fleeing landing troops, then a third, then a fourth. Each beam expanded into a golden domain 1,000 meters across. Star Luo soldiers trapped inside found themselves slowly rising from the reefs as if invisible hands gripped their throats and lifted them toward the clouds. Above the clouds, Chen Zhou stood on the waves, soaked in blood. A miniature sea god phantom hovered behind him. 3 of his 9 spirit rings were already cracked. When the 7th golden light landed, the limit Douluo coughed up blood mixed with fragments of internal organs. Enough! Dongxian's voice pulsed through spirit power resonance. Your spirit core will... Chen Zhou ignored him. He pressed his hands together. The sea god phantom made a decisive gesture. All the golden domains contracted. Thousands of enemy soldiers erupted into bloody mist like crushed ants, the reefs beneath them crumbling and sinking into newly formed fissures. Sun-Moon Federation personnel. Chen Zhou's roar shook the sky. From this moment, counterattack. Additional chapter updates for tomorrow. Popularity-based update, 258/310. Requirement not met, no extra chapter. Average subscription update, 4245. If requirement not met, no extra chapter. Reward-based update, 234/500. Requirement not met, no extra chapter. I still owe 12 chapters, plus 3 basic chapter updates, a total of 15 chapters. Group number, 3052747. Popularity has dropped sharply over the past 2 days, from 430 to 360, and from 360 to today's 250. If it remains around 250, I will have to stop rapid updates, plan a new book, and start fresh. I wrote this story out of passion, but if it cannot at least earn a little pocket money, I'll need to focus on finishing Douluo Continent and then move on to a new project. I thank everyone for their support along the way. I see it all. There is no need for readers who have been following to provide assistance. My day job pays decently, so please be prepared. Chapter 248, Drinking Poison to Quench Thirst. The sudden, large-scale war launched by the Star Luo Empire and the Douluo Empire had come to an end. Neither side achieved a decisive victory. The imperial advisor of the Star Luo Empire and the Grand Marshal of the Douluo Empire were both dead. 54% of the combined naval fleet was damaged. 100,000 Spirit Master troops and 60,000 regular soldiers suffered casualty rates exceeding 60%. The Sun-Moon Federation likewise won no clear advantage. The Western Legion was nearly wiped out, the Northwestern Legion's mobile forces were annihilated, and the fleet lost 60% of its ships. General Dong Xian, commander of the Western Legion, died for his country. 31 titled Douluo from the War God Hall, Western Legion, Northwestern Legion, Sea God Legion, and Central Legion were killed in the fighting. The Federation did retake the West Coast, but that only inflamed the resolve of officials in the Star Luo and Douluo empires across the sea. The message was clear. The Sun-Moon Federation is not invincible. Hu Shatian, who had obstructed Chen Zhou and rendered outstanding service, was appointed Grand Marshal of the Star Luo Empire. The Emperor of the Douluo Empire named the Golden Claw God Grand Marshal of the Douluo Empire. Both empires were sharpening their swords, already preparing for another confrontation with the Sun-Moon Federation. For a time, the situation on Douluo Star was volatile. "This is astonishing," one official muttered. "In a single day, you've toyed with the Star Luo Empire, the Douluo Empire, and the Sun-Moon Federation. The Tang sect is half crippled. Even if that elusive sect master, who appears and disappears like a phantom dragon, returns, recovery will be difficult. Shrek Academy's invincible golden body has been broken. They can only retreat and seek peace." The Spirit Transfer Pagoda's stance is ambiguous. They're clearly leaning toward deeper cooperation with the Jishou Chamber of Commerce. Guyo, dressed in a neat secretary uniform, sat on the sofa in Chen Zhou's office, sorting through her thoughts. Under conditions of absolute power, no matter how wise, Those in high positions will still be tempted to recruit the generals under the Jishou Chamber of Commerce. Chen Zhou shook his head calmly. It's simple, he said. This is a pattern repeated through history. As long as you read history, you'll see it. Many high-ranking people don't remain immune to temptation. People have desires, and desire drives them to willingly drink poison to quench thirst, even when they know the cost. Chen Zhou stood. The concluding work for this plane had already begun and required little of his direct intervention. Huo Wuji, the Golden Claw God, and Hu Sha Tian were all supreme overlords commanding armies and controlling territories. With their combined offensive and defensive maneuvers, the plan to reclaim the Douluo Plain on 3 fronts didn't need Chen Zhou, the war mecha king who had always hidden his hand, to act. Gu Yue listened, a little stunned. She looked at the man who was orchestrating the chessboard that controlled so much and felt a complicated emotion stir inside her. She had once believed she could control the destiny of humans and spirit beasts, that by executing her plan she could overturn human rule on Douluo Star and restore the Soul Beast Clan's glory from the Dragon God era. Now she realized she had been only one piece on a much larger board. Her past certainties felt foolish. "What about you?" she asked, tilting her head. Her silver hair brushed her shoulder as she looked straight at Chen Zhou. "When you face something you deeply desire, can you stay calm? Will you not be blinded by desire?" Chen Zhou smiled, a smile with depth and quiet irony. He moved to the window and looked down over the bustling East Sea city. This city, raised swiftly under the Jishou Chamber of Commerce, now the focal point of the struggle between empires. There was a weathered quality to him, unlike a 15-year-old. Since the 4 mental runes, wind, fire, earth, water, had been inscribed in his mental core, his entire mental world had been expanding and his soul restoring, bringing unity of body and spirit. The soul from his previous life resurfaced, bringing back an indifferent steadiness. Chen Zhou seemed both present and otherworldly, his gaze like a starry vault, weighted with years and quiet knowledge. His long black hair framed dark eyes that hinted at time's mysteries. "Desire is like a spring bloom, fragrant at first, but it always has thorns," he said, his voice low and steady, like a clear mountain stream. "We all chase desires, dreams, power, the gentle warmth of human affection. Desire is the engine of life." Gu Yue listened in silence, her eyes reflecting 1,000 memories. Once covered in silver-white dragon scales, now in human form, she was magnificent, cloud-like black hair and clear purple eyes like stars in the night. But only she knew the depth of self-doubt beneath that splendor. Her plan had collapsed. She felt lost and had shifted burdens that were hers alone to bear. The title of Soul Beast co-ruler, the Silver Dragon King who inherited Dragon God wisdom, seemed to weigh on eyes that had lost some of their old light. She quietly admitted, "I wanted spirit beasts and humans to live together in peace. I wanted a world without those tragedies." Chen Zhou walked back and sat beside her. "You know, that original intention is what I mean," he said. "But no matter how pure the start, it gets tarnished, distorted by hardships and indulgence. Still, in the end, things return to their destination. Often, what we cannot have brushes past us at the very end." He regarded her for a moment, then spoke plainly. "Does Dai Tianling of the Star Luo Empire not know that Hu Shatian is affiliated with my Jishou Chamber of Commerce? Does he not suspect that Hu Shatian may have caused this great war, and even the death of NC, their empire's only limit Douluo? Tomorrow's extra update situation. Popularity extra update, 258,310. Not met, no extra update. Average subscription extra update, 4245. Not met, no extra update. Reward extra update, 234,500. Not met, no extra update. We still owe 12 extra chapters plus 3 basic chapters for a total of 15 chapters. Group number, 3527487. The popularity has dropped significantly over the past 2 days, from 430 to 360, and from 360 to 250 today. If it stays around 250, the author may have to stop the rapid update schedule, plan a new book, and start over. This book is written out of love, but if it cannot earn at least a little pocket money, the author will have to give up writing about other worlds like the Divine Throne, finish Douluo Continent, and then start a new work. I am very grateful for everyone's support so far. The author sees and appreciates it all. There is no need for continuous readers to feel pressured to help. The author has a job and a decent income, so please be prepared. Chapter 249, Beauty Under the Moonlight. Chen Zhou breathed in the faint scent drifting from the loose strand of hair at his cheek, his gaze calm and deep as the night sky. He raised a hand and gently tucked the hair behind Guyue's ear. The movement of his fingers was light as brushing a cloud, almost imperceptible, but full of a quiet tenderness. Guyue's purple eyes flickered. She didn't pull back. "He certainly knows," she said. Chen Zhou chuckled, a sound that held both amusement and a hint of coldness. But Dai Tianling never cared about the truth. The Star Luo Empire is already a hollow shell. If not for the internal chaos inside the Sun Moon Federation, the Douling Empire and Star Luo never would have dared challenge them. So he has only one chance to see it through. The advanced soul guidance technology supplied by our Jisho Chamber of Commerce and a timely victory, those have set the entire Star Luo Empire ablaze. The Dai family, if they don't want the state to die, will swallow poison to quench their thirst, burying reason under desire. The curious thing is, even knowing how it will end, they still rush forward without hesitation. That's the most fascinating thing about humanity. Outside, moonlight poured like water across the office floor, casting their joined silhouettes. Chen Zhou looked at Guyu with no impurity in his expression, only an appreciation for beauty. The night held a stillness. Moonlight slipped through the glass and draped the room in silk. In that cool silver glow, the woman on the sofa became almost otherworldly. Ink-black hair spilling over her shoulders, skin like fresh snow, purple eyes deep and fathomless, as if they held starlight. Even in a secretary's crisp uniform and tailored skirt, she seemed unapproachable, like a cloud above the mundane. The moonlight traced her brow, giving her face an ethereal, almost immortal quality. She sat with her fingertips resting on her lap, expression calm, neither pleased nor angry. Still, when she lifted her gaze, wherever it fell was like the surface of cold water disturbed by a ripple. The effect made one think twice before treating her lightly. A night wind slipped in through a crack and stirred the strands at her temples, only emphasizing her otherworldly elegance. The scene matched the old lines. The bright moon illuminates the secluded one. Its clear radiance reveals jade bones. Once a silver dragon in human form, even hiding among mortals, she radiated nobility, like a pearl glowing in the dark. Unlike Chen Zhou, who watched her with keen interest, Guyu remained almost silent, tracing the leather of the sofa with her fingertips. A sudden thought struck her. Perhaps everything she had planned so far was merely a child's sandbox game to the man before her. She murmured, "So the Douling Empire and Star Luo are just pawns in your plan?" Chen Zhou shook his head, gazing at the neon-lit night outside. The lights of East Sea City mingled with the far-off searchlights of the Federation's soul guidance forces, like a soft foretaste of war. "Pawns? Not exactly," he said. "More like moths that throw themselves into the flame." "Moths?" Guyue frowned. He summoned a light screen in the air. A holographic map of the Douluo continent floated into view. The three major powers glowed in different hues, and the Jisho Chamber of Commerce's influence spread like a web across most of the East Sea, even seeping into the heartlands of the Federation and the two empires. "Star Luo and Douling are desperate for victory," Chen Zhou continued. "They need the illusion that the Sun-Moon Federation can be defeated to shore up their shaky rule at home. But that victory will only deepen their despair," Guyue said automatically. Chen Zhou smiled. "True, but does that matter? History is full of self-deception. They hypnotize themselves into thinking they can turn Hu Sha Tian and Golden Claw God into sharp swords for their hands. They don't realize the hilts of those swords have always been in my hands. As the saying goes, a great bird chooses where to rest. How can geniuses like Hu Sha Tian and Golden Claw God be trusted to two fools who delude themselves and drink poison to slake their thirst?" Guyue's purple eyes narrowed. The war's outcome had been decided long before it began. The victories of Star Luo and Douling were poisoned seeds Chen Zhou had planted, and those seeds had been nourished by the ambitions of high-ranking officials, dragging both empires into deeper ruin. "And the Sun-Moon Federation?" she asked. "They suffered enormous losses. Will they just stand by?" Chen Zhou's attention shifted to the Federation's territory on the display, focusing on the recently reclaimed West Coast. "The Federation?" he said with a hint of derision. "They're the most laughable party, masters of internal strife, incompetent in facing outside threats." He rose and walked to the window, looking down on the city that belonged to him. "Their upper echelons are rotten. Behind the parliamentary systems are open and hidden fights among powerful interest groups. The War God Hall was supposed to counter the Sea God Pavilion's top fighters from Shrek Academy, but in reality, most members of the War God Hall have tangled ties to Shrek. The Tang sect offers only outdated soul guidance tech, and the Spirit Transfer Pagoda sits aloof, gathering wealth and waiting for something to happen." "So you set a scheme against the Federation too?" Guyu asked, narrowing her eyes. "No." Chen Zhou turned, his dark gaze deep as a well. "I simply gave them a push. I didn't create the Federation's problems. I only hastened their decay." Guyu fell quiet, thinking it over. Chen Zhou's chessboard was far larger than she had imagined. He wasn't merely manipulating a war, he was manipulating hearts. The greed in Star Luo and Do Ling, the Federation's corruption, the pride of the Spirit Transfer Pagoda and Shrek Academy, all became his pieces. And to him, these maneuvers seemed as effortless as a child playing. She stood and joined him at the window. Her long black hair framed a noble, composed silhouette. Together they watched the sleepless city. Her purple eyes reflected the lights below, both beautiful and deadly. Update on bonus chapters. Popularity bonus 258,310, not met, no bonus chapter. Average subscription bonus 4245, not met, no bonus chapter. Reward bonus 234,500, not met, no bonus chapter. Outstanding 12 ode chapters plus 3 base chapters, total of 15 chapters. Group number 3.0527487. Popularity has dropped a lot over the last 2 days, from 430 to 360, then from 360 to 250 today. If it stays around 250, the author will have to stop the current rapid update pattern, conceive a new book, and start over. This series was written out of passion, but if it can't earn some pocket money, the author may have to give up writing other world-building works like Throne of Seal in the future, finish Douluo Continent, and then move on to a new project. Thank you all for your support so far. The author sees it all. That said, readers who follow this closely need not feel pressured to help. The author has a job and a decent salary, so please be prepared. Chapter 250. Wisdom needs to be precipitated. Accumulation makes it full. "What exactly do you want?" She finally asked the question that had been gnawing at her for a long time. To control the entire Douluo continent? To make the Jisho Chamber of Commerce the new ruler? Or something even grander? Chen Zhou didn't answer at once. His gaze pierced past the office windows, as if seeing through space and time to the far edge of the ancient starry sky. For a moment, the office fell silent, broken only by the distant murmur of the city outside. "What if I told you this is only the beginning?" His voice grew oddly distant. "Guyu, have you ever thought about the world beyond Douluo Star?" Guyu startled. As the Silver Dragon King, she had inherited fragments of cosmic memory through the Dragon God, but those memories were remote, like dreams of another life. "The God Realm?" she guessed. Chen Zhou shook his head and smirked. "Do those self-proclaimed gods even deserve the title? Douluo Star is only one small part of the universe. Those so-called gods are content in their self-importance. They've never understood how much vaster and more complex the cosmos really is." His words unsettled Guyu. She thought of her past, of climbing, scheming, the relentless pursuit of power, and had never considered that a far greater world might exist beyond the ground beneath her feet. "Why tell me this?" she asked. She crossed her arms, cool composure masking her thoughts. "Are you recruiting me?" Chen Zhou chuckled and shook his head, an indifferent glint in his eyes. "I merely want you to know, don't waste a narrow, short-sighted gaze on me. Since you're here, either commit and leave your old ways behind, or stay and follow orders while waiting for whatever outcome you hope for." He saw through her. How could he not? As his secretary, Guyu had lately been feeding him visions of divine return and the glories of the God Realm. The atmosphere in the office suddenly stiffened. Moonlight outside dulled. Guyu's usually composed face paled, a flicker of alarm. She'd been read, crossing her violet eyes. She took a reflexive half-step back, her heels tapping on the marble. Chen Zhou reached out and closed his hand around her wrist. It wasn't a crushing grip, but she couldn't pull away. His palm was cool and steady, like a slab of jade, and it sent a shiver through her. "What are you afraid of?" His voice was soft and lightly teasing. "That I'll see through your little schemes? Or that I'll throw you back into the Stardew Great Forest this instant?" Outside, the night shifted. Dark clouds rolled in and hid the moon. The office sank into deeper shadow. Only Chen Zhou's eyes seemed to glow like two faint, steady coals. Guyu inhaled, steadying herself. The Silver Dragon King's arrogance let her suppress the turmoil, and she lifted her chin to meet his gaze. "If you already know, why keep me by your side? Because I don't think you're utterly beyond redemption." Chen Zhou released her wrist and moved back to his desk, his slim silhouette cutting a clean line in the dim room. He lifted an engraved glass decanter from the table. The amber liquid inside sloshed and gave off a faint scent of pine. The pride of the Silver Dragon King, the fragment of a dragon god, the inheritor of the Dragon Clan's revival. He poured 2 small glasses. "Those are impressive titles, aren't they?" He pushed a clear glass toward her and took a tentative sip himself, the wine leaving a sheen at his lips. Guyo didn't touch her glass. She watched him. Something in her violet gaze shifted. "I've seen too many like you," Chen Zhou said, setting his glass down and tracing the rim with a fingertip. Years, centuries seemed to pass in his look. Carrying grand missions, suffocated by vague responsibility, never stopping to ask if any of it is worth the price, or whether you even have the strength to pay it. He paused, then added quietly, "Wisdom needs to settle. Accumulation makes it full. When your wisdom doesn't match the responsibility you claim, you should quietly build yourself up instead of broadcasting your weaknesses to the world or trying to use the barbarians to defeat the barbarians." A lightning flash lanced across the window and for an instant revealed the 2 figures in stark relief. Thunder followed, as if punctuating his argument. Guyue's hair shone silver in the lightning. "You don't understand the Dragon Clan's history," she said at last, voice low. "You don't know what we've lost." "I don't have time to wait." Chen Zhou's reply was flat. "You don't understand," she insisted. "I don't," he agreed, "but I know what foolishness looks like." The night wind rose and rain began to streak the glass. Guyue's fingers tightened around her wine glass. The amber liquid caught her wavering expression. "Foolish?" she echoed softly, a bitter twitch to her mouth. "Maybe, but some things can't be fixed by wisdom alone." Chen Zhou looked at her, then laughed, half scornful, half amused. "So you think sacrifice is the answer?" He crossed to the war map of the Douluo continent on the wall and tapped the spot where the Stardew Great Forest lay. "You know as well as I do that the decline of the soul beasts wasn't caused only by humans. Internal strife, the dilution of bloodlines, celestial tribulations, those were already sealing your fate. And what did you do? You tried to save the soul beasts by controlling humans, without truly understanding human society. You think that by posing as Guyu among their elite, you could uncover how they operated? You misunderstand the simplest driver of human behavior, desire." His voice was calm, but each sentence landed like a blade, slicing through the pretenses she'd long maintained. Guyu's breathing quickened, but she forced herself calm and met him directly. "So, in your view, are the soul beasts doomed to extinction?" "No." Chen Zhou shook his head. "Your direction was wrong." "Direction?" She frowned. He tapped the desk, measured, considering. After a moment, he opened a drawer, took out an ornate metal box, and set it on the table. He unlatched it, and inside lay a faint blue crystal that pulsed with a weak, strange spirit fluctuation. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. Guyu's gaze froze. "A soul core? No, this isn't right. The quality of the spirit fluctuation has changed." Chapter 251, Still So Stupid. "This is a spirit energy crystal," Chen Zhou explained. "It's the latest research achievement of the Jisho Chamber of Commerce. It combines spirit tool technology with a simulated spirit beast soul core structure to perfectly integrate human spirit power with mechanical energy." What is it for?" Guyue's heart skipped a beat. "It's simple," Chen Zhou said with a faint smile. "It can completely revolutionize artificial spirit ring technology, allowing spirit masters to acquire spirit abilities tailored to them without having to hunt spirit beasts. What? Guyue's pupils narrowed so sharply she felt the world tilt. The Spirit Transfer Pagoda's artificial spirit rings have always been limited. At best, they can simulate low-level spirit beasts. High-level spirit masters still have to hunt for real spirit rings to get the best abilities. But the technology built on the spirit energy crystal can replace that entirely. In other words, the value of spirit beasts and humanity's need to hunt them would vanish. Thunder rolled beyond the window, and the rain intensified, but for a moment Guyo felt as if everything stopped. If spirit masters no longer needed to hunt spirit beasts, the core conflict between humans and spirit beasts could end. A voice surged in her mind. Take him down. Seize this technology. Your long-cherished wish is within reach. Her fingertips trembled. A cold light flashed in her purple eyes as she stared at the crystal in Chen Zhou's hand and imagined the future of the entire Soul Beast clan. If she controlled this, humans would have no reason to hunt spirit beasts. Her people in the Stardew Great Forest might finally breathe. The Silver Dragon King blood in her stirred. Then her gaze locked with Chen Zhou's abyss-like dark eyes, and the impulse snapped away as if cut. Chen Zhou's look said one thing plainly: move now, and you die. He chuckled softly, setting the crystal back in its metal case. His tone was leisurely. Guyue, were you thinking of snatching it just now? She fell silent a moment, then let out a slow breath. Her trembling fingers steadied, her mouth curved into a thin, controlled smile. For a moment, yes. Chen Zhou showed no surprise, only a slight shake of the head. Good thing you held back. Otherwise, you'd be a corpse by now. I'm not threatening you, he said, just stating a fact. Fear flickered in Guyue's violet eyes. She knew Chen Zhou wasn't bluffing. His power remained unfathomable. So, why reveal the existence of this technology? Humph. Chen Zhou closed the case with a casual snap. I was teasing you. Our Supreme Research Group did some preliminary work on soul spirit technology, but it was rudimentary, and the project was shut down. This crystal was only to make a joke. He looked almost pleased with himself, as if he'd enjoyed watching her wrestle with the temptation. For a moment, Guyue was stunned into silence. Anger rose in her like a tide, a cold fury the Silver Dragon King blood could scarcely contain. The rain on the window seemed to pound harder in time with her heartbeat. Her fingertips dug into her palms until the nails bit the skin, but she kept her face composed, icy, controlled. Only her eyes burned with complicated heat. Is it funny? She asked so softly the rain almost swallowed it, but there was an edge of chill in the words. Chen Zhou tilted his head and smiled. Honestly, yes, it was interesting to see the dignified Silver Dragon King lose her composure. A silver light flashed. Guyue's hair lifted, though no wind stirred. A brilliant argent aura burst from her, and under the Silver Dragon King's authority, the elemental forces between heaven and earth surged. The temperature in the office plummeted, moisture frosted the walls. Thunder in the air hissed with dangerous intent. Chen Zhou raised one hand and snapped his fingers. The torrent of elemental power stopped mid-flow, frozen as if someone had hit pause. Guyue's pupils constricted. Her link to the elements had been forcefully severed by a higher power. Good girl. Don't make a fuss, Chen Zhou said lazily. He swept his slim fingers through the air, and the frozen energies dissipated like a tide receding. The downpour outside ceased at the same instant, the dark clouds scattering at an unnatural speed to reveal moonlight pouring back in. The whole scene felt absurdly theatrical. Guyue's body trembled, not from fear, but with the dawning realization of just how terrifyingly powerful this young-looking man was. He dominated the elements with a facility far beyond hers, even with the Dragon God's elemental authority that came through her Silver Dragon King bloodline. See? Still so impatient, Chen Zhou said with a shake of his head, looking at her with a mixture of pity and amusement. I thought that in the months since we last met, you would have at least a little growth. And yet, you're still so stupid. The words landed like blows. He spoke with a merciless calm, disappointment and mockery braided together. He walked back to his desk and dropped the metal case into a drawer. It clinked crisply. Guyue's chest heaved. Fine silver scales flared across her skin, her bloodline on the verge of breaking loose. Reason told her any further resistance would be futile. Are you done? she managed, hoarse. Chen Zhou met her gaze and sighed softly. Guye, do you know what disappoints me the most? She waited. It's that you've never truly examined yourself. He leaned back, tapping his temple with a fingertip. The so-called dragon god split, the part you inherited as the Silver Dragon King, was the dragon god's wisdom. But I can't see any wisdom in you. When I told you that soul spirit technology could free humanity from dependence on spirit beasts, your first thought was to take me down and seize it? He shook his head, half amused. You eventually abandoned that idea, but still, have you ever thought through what would happen when the vested interests between humans and spirit beasts evaporate? When spirit masters no longer need spirit beasts to grow and the Soul Beast Clan becomes completely dispensable to humanity? Chapter 252, Stay Guye's pupils suddenly contracted. A terrifying truth crashed into her. If humans no longer needed spirit beasts, then spirit beasts would lose all value to them. What happens to a clan that has no value? History already had the answer. Chen Zhou's gaze was like a blade, cutting through the question she had always avoided. Humans will not tolerate a large, dangerous clan competing with them for living space, especially if that clan is useless to them. The peaceful coexistence you want depends on spirit beasts being useful to humans, but when that usefulness disappears, his voice deepened, striking her like a hammer. What awaits spirit beasts is domestication or extermination. Guyu swayed and gripped the armrest of the sofa to steady herself. Moonlight fell across her pale face. The arrogance and fury in her purple eyes drained away, replaced by bottomless fear. The silence after the storm filled the office. Her slender fingers sank into the leather, leaving thin scratches. She looked at Chen Zhou, whose eyes seemed to see through everything, and for the first time she felt nakedly exposed. Not just her schemes, but the cruel truth she had refused to face. So, everything I've worked for these past years. Her voice was barely a whisper. Was wrong. Chen Zhou walked to the window, watching the stars reappear. Actions built on false premises only take you farther from your goal the harder you try. You understood from the start, didn't you? She demanded, looking up. He nodded. Yes. Her eyes widened. The vertical pupils that marked her majesty constricted, and she shouted, Then why didn't you tell me sooner? Chen Zhou turned. Moonlight carved his profile. Tell whom? The Silver Dragon King, hiding in the Stardew Great Forest, plotting revenge? The Avenger who used your identity to infiltrate the Spirit Transfer Pagoda? Or, he pointed at her chest, this arrogant dragon girl who hasn't even figured out what she wants. Soft light brightened the room. The soul-guided lamps overhead adjusted to the most comfortable glow, cutting through the gloom left by the rain. The sudden radiance made Guyue squint. When she reopened her eyes, Chen Zhou was less than a foot away. He lifted a hand and with the lightest touch, tilted her chin upward. The motion carried an irresistible authority, tempered by an odd gentleness. Guyue's lashes trembled. She felt the warmth of his fingertips, like a last trace of winter sun, seemingly warm, but always holding a hint of chill. Why tell me now? She whispered. His voice was low and resonant, a lingering cello note in the quiet room. He leaned closer. The tip of his nose nearly brushed her cheek. His breath smelled faintly of pine and cigar. Because I need you to know that your foolishness has already wasted too much time. Those words drove like a nail into her chest. For the first time, she understood that all of Chen Zhou's sarcasm, his teasing, even this humiliating proximity, had been meant to shatter her deep-rooted pride. The Silver Dragon King's dignity, her claim as the dragon god's successor, her obsession with reviving the Soul Beast Clan, these pillars that had held her for 1,000 years were being dismantled by him. Moonlight shifted, and Chen Zhou's presence loomed over her. Guyu had nowhere to retreat. Her back hit the floor-to-ceiling window. The cold glass seeped through her thin secretary's blouse, while the man before her pressed down on her nerves like a tangible weight. Now, he said, releasing her chin and stepping back half a pace, I'll give you two choices. He raised one finger. First, persist with your revenge. I'll send you back to the Stardew Great Forest immediately. Let's see what you and your spirit beasts can do. He raised a second finger. Second, stay by my side and see this world for yourself, not as an avenger, but as a student. Guyo froze. She had never imagined facing such a choice. To stay by this inscrutable man's side meant abandoning 1,000 years of obsession, admitting that her plans were wrong. To leave meant returning to the forest and whatever vengeance she could muster. Her gaze slid to the drawer that held the spirit energy crystal. Chen Zhou noticed the movement and chuckled. Seems you already know the answer. He went to the desk, opened the drawer, and took out the metal box. This time, he tossed it to Gu Yue. Instinctively, the Silver Dragon King caught it. The cool metal made her fingertips tremble. "Open it," he said. Gu Yue hesitated, then pressed the release. The box was empty, the dark blue crystal gone. In its place lay a silvery white scale, a dragon scale, pure and silver. Recognition hit her like a blow. She knew the aura on that scale intimately. It was the scale she had shed when she reverted to human form that time. "This is," she started, stunned, "just to be safe." Chen Zhou's tone was casual. "I always keep a backup plan, in case a certain Silver Dragon King acts on impulse. For instance," he glanced at the night sky, "summoning a beast tide to attack human cities." Gu Yue's fingers clenched so hard the box creaked in her hand. She understood now. Her trump cards had never really been in her control, and the spirit energy crystal, "It's real," she said. Chen Zhou seemed to read her thought. "The technology is real. It's still experimental and needs some special materials." He walked over and took the box back, his thumb brushing her wrist as if by accident. A strange energy ripple passed through her, purer than any spirit power she'd felt, but precise and almost mechanical. "Now," he said softly, "tell me your choice." His voice carried the weight of a verdict. Gu Yue drew a long breath. Outside the window, Donghai City blazed with light. Neon stained the night purple. This steel forest of human design had once been the thing she loathed most. Now she stood on the edge of a decision that could alter the fate of the Soul Beast clan. "I choose," her voice quivered, then steadied, "to stay." Group number 305-27487. First 3 chapters released, more than 3 updates tonight. Chapter 253, World Plane. Chen Zhou revealed a satisfied smile. He turned and pressed a hidden button on his desk, and the east wall of the office slid open to reveal an elevator. "Come on," he said. "I'll show you something interesting." The elevator doors opened soundlessly, releasing a cool white light. Chen Zhou stepped in first. Gu Yue hesitated a moment before following. The elevator descended with surprising speed. Through its transparent shaft, she could see the interior of the Jishou Chamber of Commerce headquarters. Countless busy staff, flickering data screens, and spirit tool machines unlike any she had seen. As they sank deeper, the surroundings grew more high-tech, holographic virtual sandboxes, floating design blueprints, and researchers in white coats clustered around a giant transparent container. Inside it, a magnified spirit energy crystal floated, luminous and unreal. "Welcome to the 150th basement level," someone announced. "The true core of the Jishou Chamber of Commerce, the Arc Laboratory," Chen Zhou said into her ear. They stepped out onto a floor of translucent composite material through which dimmer structures flickered below. The air smelled faintly metallic and thrummed with strange energy. "This is a place to research the future," Chen Zhou finished and led her down a long corridor. Scientists at the labs on either side glanced up and nodded. Their faces showed a fanatic devotion. Not fear of power, but a hunger for truth. Finally, they stopped before a silver-white metal door. Chen Zhou placed his palm on the identification panel. A blue scan swept across it, and the heavy door slid open soundlessly. The sight inside stole Gu Yue's breath. Suspended in the center of the chamber was a holographic projection of a miniature planet, Douluo Star. But it was different. Concentric rings of light and alien structures she did not recognize circled the familiar globe. Beyond it, other projected worlds orbited, forming a tiny, intricate solar system. "This is what we truly need to face," Chen Zhou said. He stood beside the projection, starlight gleaming in his eyes. The conflict between spirit beasts and humans, the ambitions of the 2 great empires, the Federal's corruption, those are nothing more than... He waved his hand, and the hologram zoomed out, passing through the planet's atmosphere into the vastness of space. The squabbling of frogs in a well. Gu Yue stared at the star map, and for the first time she felt the immensity Chen Zhou had been trying to show her. His world was far vaster and far crueler than she had imagined. He turned to her with a small, mysterious smile. "Now," he asked, "are you ready to reacquaint yourself with this world, my dear Silver Dragon King?" From the start, the Silver Dragon King had only inherited the elemental authority granted by the Dragon God. The wisdom and deeper inheritance had not been passed on, or perhaps they had been eroded during that endless slumber. Chen Zhou didn't know how many planes the Douluo God realm controlled, but he did know the awful fact. In this universe, life-bearing planets were terrifyingly numerous, and a frighteningly large proportion of them developed plane consciousness. In his previous life, under the watch of the Supreme Hall, countless life-bearing worlds filled the cosmic void. But planets rarely clustered, and even fewer ever produced plane consciousness. Guyue's fingertips brushed the holographic star map. The light points rippled under her touch. The cosmic vista swirled in her violet eyes, the distant stars seeming to pierce through billions of years and drag fragments of memory up from the Dragon God's depths. It was a Dragon Clan cosmos far vaster than the one she knew. "What do you see?" Chen Zhou's voice was calm, as if a breeze across the stars. Guyu opened her mouth, but no words came. Her throat tightened, her heart hammering. Those memories were too ancient, so old she had thought them gone. Now, at the touch of the image, the sealed inheritance burst forth like a floodgate. "Star Dragon," she managed, two halting syllables escaping her lips. Cold sweat pricked her forehead. The surge of memory was triggering the Dragon God's self-protection. Chen Zhou watched her for a moment, then reached out and placed his hand against her back. A cool current flowed from his palm into her body, steadying the chaos in her spirit sea. "Relax," he said, unusually gentle. "Don't try to absorb it all at once." Her breathing slowed. When she looked at the map again, the projection had shifted. It was no longer a strange starfield, but a homeland engraved into her bloodline. "This is the starfield the Dragon God once ruled," she whispered. "No," Chen Zhou corrected. "Theoretically, this is the starfield as it was before the God realm departed." According to his deductions, the old Douluo God realm had been swept away by a cosmic storm, and the distances between world planes had been scrambled by that cataclysm. In one sense, that chaos was fortunate. Chen Zhou believed that the existence of something like the Douluo God realm had been abrupt and anomalous. It linked multiple planes through ascension channels and used a special core to convert eternal energy, allowing powerful beings to persist indefinitely. But in theory, that arrangement completely interrupted the world's natural evolution. To Chen Zhou, that was incomprehensible. The evolution of a world is upward. All things nurture living beings, and mighty beings in turn nourish heaven and earth. As top-tier powerhouses emerge, they pursue ascension by various means, through yin and yang interactions, through plundering other planes, or through civilizational ascension. The Douluo God realm, however, seemed to cut off those ascent routes, gathering powerhouses into a separate space for eternal existence. From the countless civilizations Chen Zhou had observed in his past life, such a model amounted to digging one's own grave. It stunted the world's self-improvement cycle and left subordinate planes trapped forever at a low tier. He shook his head, then took Guyue by the shoulders and turned her to face him. "I didn't bring you here so you could feast your eyes on a sky full of stars," he said. "I brought you here so you could see the truth behind them. In this universe, life-bearing planets are countless, and world planes are as numerous as hairs on an ox," he continued. "Why," he asked sharply, "must our gaze be fixed on this tiny Douluo Star?" His question struck like a blade through Guyue's millennia-long obsession. The starlight in her violet eyes dimmed and was replaced by a deep, bewildered silence. Group number 3052747. First 3 chapters released, 3 or more updates tonight. Chapter 254, Dragon Valley. The ceiling light painted shifting shadows across her delicate face. "Are you saying we should give up on reviving the Soul Beast Clan?" Guyue's voice was slightly hoarse. Her fingertips unconsciously traced the silver dragon scales at her shoulder. "On the contrary," Chen Zhou said. He released her shoulders and walked to the holographic projector. With a tap, the star map snapped into focus and magnified. "I want you to see a wider path." Under the projection, Douluo Star decomposed into flowing energy patterns, the molecular streams of the world itself laid bare. Chen Zhou's fingertip traced the outline of a mountain range. Do you know why a 100,000-year spirit beast must reform, or it simply cannot withstand the heavenly tribulation that descends from that plane? Guyo frowned. Punishment from the god realm. Wrong, Chen Zhou interrupted. It's the foundation of this world, the origin of the spirit beasts, that's been bound by rules imposed by an originally supreme existence. As far as I know, only the dragon god could reach such a degree. Guyo stared at him, disbelief on her face. How is that possible? Chen Zhou hesitated for a moment before answering. The conclusion had been hard to accept himself. This world was twisted beyond reason. Humanity's development had been warped, the world shaped by an abnormal god realm, and now even the dragon god, creator of the god realm and many planes, had acted in a way that was almost insane. Under the star deduction array, the rule that spirit beasts needed to undergo heavenly tribulation to become gods wasn't false. It had been true for ages. But after the spirit beasts' fall in the god realm, after that great calamity, the power of the descending tribulation had exploded. Countless 100,000-year spirit beasts perished under its weight. It was a curse, Chen Zhou realized, placed by the ancestor of spirit beasts, the dragon god. He struggled to summarize it without anger. Either slaughter the race you created, or bind them and make them suffer. Give them a sliver of hope only to let it become torment. It was monstrous. The metal floor lit up in an eerie blue pattern. Data streams converged at their feet, forming a complex three-dimensional array. Guyo froze when she felt the spirit power within her resonate with it. This is a byproduct of the star deduction array. Chen Zhou snapped his fingers, and an ancient draconic script bloomed within the array. We found this while analyzing the patterns of heavenly tribulation. Guyo's pupils constricted. She recognized those distorted characters, the divine edicts personally carved by the dragon god. She whispered the opening lines, voice trembling. Spirit beasts forever fall into samsara. All of my bloodline shall suffer heavenly punishment. The words scraped at something deep inside her. How is this possible? Chen Zhou watched her spiritual sea surge and fall. It seems that before the dragon god left, he placed a lock on the spirit beasts of this world. The hologram shifted to the energy map of the Stardew Great Forest's core. A black mass, DTN, the beast god, was wrapped in dense golden chains, their other ends rooted in the void. Chen Zhou tapped, and the chain structure unspooled, layer by layer. This isn't a rule of the god realm so much as a curse imprinted on the world's origin. The closer a being gets to godhood, the tighter the shackles become, and the harsher the heavenly tribulation they trigger. Guyo staggered backward until her spine hit the cold metal wall. Her black hair floated, as though caught in an invisible breeze. Shattered starlight trembled in her purple eyes. As half of the dragon god, she understood the implication with devastating clarity. The decline of the entire spirit beast race was a tragedy orchestrated by its own creator. Then why did he? Probably to atone. Chen Zhou's voice turned bitter. After all, he went mad and massacred the god realm himself. A coldness filled the room. Silver scales ghosted along Guyue's neck. An emotion she'd bottled for millennia threatened to rip free. Memories crashed in on her, the wails on the dragon god battlefield, divine blood spraying at the hour of division, and those golden eyes looking at her at the end, full of regret. Chen Zhou clapped once, a sharp sound that cut her back to the present. Don't fall apart yet. He stepped to a control panel and worked quickly. If we can find the shackles, then logically, there's a key. The hologram shifted again, revealing a vast valley folded into space. Even in projection, countless dragon bones lay strewn like mountains, their shapes wailing in grief and indignation. The metal wall rippled with blue light as fine golden lines appeared across the skeletons, patterns identical to the chains wrapped around DTN. Guiyue moved closer, her fingers passing through the virtual image and causing tiny ripples of data. She recognized the place at once. Dragon Valley. You're quick. Chen Zhou brought up three-dimensional coordinates. The folded space is hidden deep. It almost fooled even the spirit tool I developed. The image zoomed in. A central dragon bone, the size of a mountain, suddenly flared with strange light. Guyue's head buzzed. The Silver Dragon King's bloodline roared uncontrollably within her. She stumbled, clutching the edge of the console. nails screeching on metal. Chen Zhou frowned at her reaction and pressed his hand to her shoulder. Control your bloodline resonance, unless you want to wake whatever's inside prematurely. What's inside? Guyue forced herself to look. Every dragon's skull in the image burned with eerie flames in their eye sockets. Chen Zhou switched off the projection. The lab returned to its cool, neutral lighting. Aren't you curious? No matter how glorious these dragons had been, they had died across 10,000, 100,000, a million years. Time could erode residual consciousness, yet something about this world had preserved them. Are you saying there's a remnant of the dragon god inside? Guyue's voice trembled between excitement and dread. More than that. Chen Zhou tapped the air. The holographic image burst into a million points of light. The lights reassembled midair into a breathtaking, mournful scene. Thousands of giant dragon skeletons arranged around a shifting, multicolored mist. At its center hovered a dragon soul fragment, fragmented, incomplete, yet still regal and terrible. Guyue clutched her chest. Her hair poured like a dark waterfall. A tremor ran through the depths of her bloodline, a resonance that transcended time. When she looked up, her purple eyes had constricted into vertical pupils, and the faint mark of the dragon god glimmered on her forehead. A dragon god, soul fragment. Each word tore at her lips, as if ancient memories were forcing a seal open. Frost crept over the metal floor. Elemental energy in the room stirred violently. Chen Zhou's eyes narrowed. He moved and grabbed her wrist. Guyue reflexively tried to pull free, but felt a strange suction from his palm, drawing out the berserk, lingering power of the dragon god within her. Hold your breath and focus, he ordered in a voice that brooked no argument. Do you want to be devoured by that lingering resentment? Chapter 255, A Complete You is very important to me. Guyue realized with a jolt that the memory fragments surging through her were laced with overwhelming negative emotion. The dragon pattern in her pupils flickered like candlelight. She saw temples shattered beneath a blood-red sky, golden scales splintering as dragon wings broke, and above all, those dragon eyes, madness and regret baked into every memory. So many of her kin should have soared, blotting out the sun, towering above all other races. Instead, blood fell, and the once magnificent, kind dragon god rained down dragon claws that tore everything apart. Under that irresistible might, flesh and blood were shredded, bones crushed, even dragon king-level figures bled and died. The more the dragon races had loved the dragon god, the more they hated him at the instant of their deaths. Such hatred, such unwillingness. No, this can't be. Her silver teeth ground so hard she felt they might crack. It was as if her soul were being split in two. The Silver Dragon King's rationality urging her to turn away from the memories, while the dragon god's bloodline greedily devoured every fragment. Chen Zhou yanked her back 3 steps. Almost at once, 7-colored light flared where they had stood. An attack that bent space itself corroded the alloy floor, leaving claw-shaped gouges as if exposed to acid. Interesting. Chen Zhou stared at the smoking marks. A faint blue ripple danced at his fingertips, and scanning data streamed across his vision. Dragon race resentment materialized, energy level approaching full power strike. Guyue sank to her knees, long black hair falling to hide her pale face. Scales spread visibly along her neck, and her slender fingers hardened into claws. Claw tips sunk into the metal. When Chen Zhou pressed his hand to her back, it met cold, hard dragon scales. If this keeps going, you'll be forced to reveal your true form. There was an unusual solemnity in his voice. The alchemical energy in his palm seemed to form naturally. The moment he infused it into her, it fused with the power of the Silver Dragon King, replenishing what she had lost. The ailing Silver Dragon King, like parched earth meeting rain, hungrily absorbed the precisely matching energy. A soft sound escaped her, half plea, half pleasure, rippling through her soul. She wanted more. But after checking that she was stable, Chen Zhou withdrew his hand without hesitation. Her dragonizing features receded, but the storm in her purple eyes did not. Why? Her knuckles went white as she gripped Chen Zhou's sleeve. Did the dragon god do this to his own clan? Because of guilt. Chen Zhou stepped back. The lab's emergency systems engaged automatically. A circular analyzer descended and began scanning residual energy. He bent and picked up a glowing shed scale, one Guyue had just discarded. Through the translucent surface, golden patterns crystallized into view. "Look at this soul imprint," he said. "The remnants in Dragon Valley aren't ordinary dragon souls. They're direct blood relatives, those personally slain by the dragon god." It struck Gu Yue like lightning. The dragon race prized bloodline above all. The purer the dragon, the deeper the bonds to kin. Direct blood relatives meant these bones had belonged to the dragon god's closest, perhaps his children, grandchildren, or chosen successors. Their resentment still roared across time and space. How deep must that hatred be? "So Dragon Valley is both a tomb," her voice was barely audible, "and a cage. More accurately, it's a confessional." Chen Zhou twirled the shed scale between his fingers. The lab's cold light played across its surface. Then he flicked it toward a control terminal. The scale slid into a hidden port like a key and triggered a sealed program. The main screen bloomed with a horrifying vision, a phantom of the dragon god being gnawed upon by countless dragon bones, all swallowed by a kaleidoscopic mist. Gu Yue stumbled back until her spine hit metal, but the chill of the wall could not cool the inferno inside her. Each clear, grinding snap felt like a hammer blow on her soul. "Now do you understand?" Chen Zhou turned the image off. "Revitalizing the Soul Beast Clan doesn't require hostility toward humans at all. The true shackles are in Dragon Valley, and the key," he pointed to her chest, "is you." She looked down, dazed. A dragon god imprint had appeared on her palm without her noticing. It pulsed the same multicolored light as the projection. A realization struck through the fog of a millennium. As Silver Dragon King, she was not just the dragon god's successor. She was the one who could fix this catastrophe. "I need to enter Dragon Valley." When she looked up, her purple eyes were clear and steadier than they had ever been. She met Chen Zhao's gaze with a new iron resolve, and her voice trembled with pleading. "Help me." Chen Zhou's smile was the calm of someone whose plan had succeeded. He walked to the safe in the corner. The biometric lock glowed blue at his approach. 3 months ago, the ARC laboratory located Dragon Valley's spatial coordinates. The metal cabinet opened, and he took out a crystal prism with a silver, flowing substance sealed inside. "This is a spatial coordinate keyed to the scales you left behind when you transformed," he explained. "It can open a temporary passage to Dragon Valley." Gu Yue stared at the prism, feeling the familiar bloodline fluctuations pulsing from within. She reached for it, but Chen Zhou pulled it back. "Not so fast." He rotated the prism. Its silver light painted eerie patterns across his face. "Dragon Valley is a burial ground. You, the Silver Dragon King, the dragon god's half-existence. Are you sure you won't be consumed by the lingering resentment when you step inside? You should know," he added, "that in that small world there are many dead beings who were at your peak once." The prism hovered between his fingers, refusing to fall, the silver fluid inside writhing like a living thing. He raised it level with Gu Yue's eyes and said, "Conditions." The lab lights dimmed automatically. The prism became the sole light, casting an uncanny glow over her scales. The light crawled along the patterns on her neck. Gu Yue's fingers trembled, then her resolve hardened. "Help me," she said. "From now on, the Soul Beast Clan will follow your lead, through mountains of blades and seas of fire, never flinching, even if it costs 10,000 deaths." Not enough. Chen Zhou's eyes flickered with indifferent calculation, utterly unmoved by her vow. "The Soul Beast Clan is expendable to me, but you are different." He paused, the prism's light gleaming against his face. "You are very important to me, or rather, a complete you is very important to me." Chapter 256, Nair, stripped away. Gu Yue's face froze at Chen Zhou's ambiguous words. She hesitated, a flush rising to her cheeks. Bang! Chen Zhou's disgust returned. Without thinking, he smacked her on the forehead. "Is there nothing in your head besides those pervy thoughts?" Ouch! Gu Yue clutched her head and looked at him in confusion. Chen Zhou rubbed his own forehead, pointed toward the direction of Shrek Academy, and said, "Did you forget? You're not whole yet." Nair, the avatar formed from the Silver Dragon King's subordinate persona, holding 30% of the Silver Dragon King's power. Chen Zhou's words struck through Gu Yue's foggy mind like lightning. The silver glow in her purple eyes solidified. Memories from the deepest parts of her mind rushed back like a tide. It had been a bet she made with herself. "Nair, The fragment of her human consciousness that had been stripped away had vowed to protect Tang Wulin. But our bet isn't over yet, the memory insisted. Gu Yue frowned, the Silver Dragon King's fingertips unconsciously scraping marks into the metal wall. She suddenly realized something ridiculous. During her time with Chen Zhou, she had nearly forgotten the very reason she'd come to East Sea City. Nair, the avatar born of the Silver Dragon King's last curiosity about humans, was living day and night with Tang Wulin at Shrek Academy. Chen Zhou narrowed his eyes. He seemed to weigh whether such a dim-witted subordinate was even worth perfecting. But when he imagined harnessing the power to command the elements of heaven and earth and distributing it to every Mech Beast warrior, his mood brightened. Stronger warriors as a foundation meant conquering countless worlds, and alternate dimensions would be far easier. Foolishness aside, the power was worth it. With a resigned sigh, Chen Zhou gave Gu Yu another rap on the head. Your Excellency, the wise Silver Dragon King, are you really starting to believe you're human? What kind of binding force does that bet have? Is it worth acting like this? He pressed. Chen Zhou leaned in. His fierce eyes flashed with an ancient bone-deep cold. He was so close he could count her eyelashes. That bet is just a shackle you put on yourself. His slender fingers lifted Gu Yu's chin, forcing her to look into that bottomless gaze. You think it's about upholding the Dragon Clan's pride? No. His thumb brushed her trembling lips. It's an excuse a coward uses to avoid making a choice. Or maybe, Chen Zhou chuckled, sarcasm razor-sharp. You've really fallen in love with that young man, Tang Wulin? Gu Yue's pupils constricted. Her black hair stirred though there was no breeze. You. The metal floor cracked in a spiderweb from beneath her, and countless tiny silver scales began to crawl up Gu Yu's skin. The lab's alarm system screamed to life. Blinding red lights and a harsh buzzing filled the room. Chen Zhou smiled faintly. He raised a hand and snapped his fingers. The alarms cut out as if paused. The scales on Gu Yue seemed frozen, almost but not fully emerging. Flustered and furious, he observed. His fingers tightened, pinching her chin until it went white. Dangerous currents flickered in his eyes. Your Excellency, the Silver Dragon King, are you reluctant to part with that black-haired youth, or reluctant to part with the innocence of your human guise? Let go, Gu Yue roared. A blinding silver pressure erupted around her. The Silver Dragon King's force collapsed like a landslide. Chen Zhou only gave a slight shake of his arm. The violent mental surge fractured into specks of light and dissolved as if crashing against a reef. It seems it's the latter. He released her, stepped back half a pace, and adjusted his cuffs with practiced grace. What a pity. I thought I might get to see the Silver Dragon King rebelling for love routine. Gu Yue gasped, chest heaving. She stared at him as if at some incomprehensible creature. What do you want? The holographic panel on the console switched on its own and began streaming surveillance from Shrek Academy. On the screen, a black-haired young man and a black-haired young woman walked side by side along Sea God Lake, the setting sun outlining them in gold. How youthful, Chen Zhou murmured. He tapped the image. It enlarged and froze on Nair's smiling profile. This avatar, carrying 30% of your power, is nourishing that Golden Dragon King seed with your Silver Dragon King blood. He turned back to Gu Yue, a chilling light in his eyes. What do you imagine will happen when the Golden Dragon King seal inside Tang Wulin is fully broken? Gu Yue felt a cold crawl up her spine. She already knew the answer. If the Golden and Silver Dragon King powers met in the same vessel, Nair would be consumed. Tang Wulin might gain the Sea God's power, but Nair, or the portion of the Silver Dragon King that constituted Nair, would be gone forever. It seems our esteemed Silver Dragon King has finally started to use her brain, Chen Zhou applauded coldly. The surveillance shifted to a stream of data. According to the Supreme Research Group's calculations, at Tang Wulin's current unsealing speed, there are still... He drew the moment out and watched Gu Yu's shoulders stiffen. 6 years. And since the Silver and Golden Dragon Kings share an origin, he continued, do you think there won't be some early interaction within those 6 years? Gu Yue gripped the edge of the console until her knuckles ached. Is this what you want? Her voice was like ice breaking. To watch me be made a clown of? Chen Zhou's eyebrow twitched almost imperceptibly. He approached the main console and moved with the calm certainty of someone who believed everything belonged to him. "What I want is a complete Silver Dragon King," he said, fingers tapping a cold rhythm on the holographic keys as he pulled up files, not a defective product, fractured by clumsy emotional drama. The screen split into hundreds of windows, each a slice of Nair and Tang Wulin's life together. Images spun and arranged themselves in midair like a deck of cards. "How touching," he said softly. "The stray child who stuck around for bread and was taken in as a sister, the fireflies released at Sea God Lake, the candy shared in the work-study dormitory." Each phrase scraped like a knife against Guyue's heart. Memories that belonged to Nair were overlaying her own, blurring them into a dazzling, chaotic mess. The screen went dark. Chen Zhou turned, holding a metal box. The lid slid open to reveal a crystal filled with flowing, liquid silver light. The light reflected in Guyue's eyes like a shattered mirror. Her fingertips trembled uncontrollably as she stared at the thing that looked like a broken piece of herself. Chapter 257, Then I'll Make Her Understand. "What if we assume this is the origin you stripped away?" Chen Zhou held the crystal up to the light. Silver light passed through it and painted ripples across Guyu's pale face. "The core of your origin, what you lost when you split into Nair, should have automatically merged when the clone returned." The metal box snapped shut, cutting the silver glow short. "But now it's frozen in an interesting quantum state. It belongs to you, and yet it's not wholly under your control." Guyue felt cold fingers clamp around her heart. She could feel power pulsing from the crystal, the essence that made Nair what she was, and the reason Guyue could never reclaim the missing 30% of her strength. Chen Zhou leveled the box toward her. "Make a choice. Either take it back now, and that little one called Nair will vanish like a dewdrop in sunlight. Or," his fingertip tapped a dangerous rhythm on the lid, "wait 6 years and watch her, along with the Golden Dragon King's essence, be completely consumed by Tang Wulin." Guyue's knuckles tore as she dug them into her palms. Blood welled and fell. At 15, still in human form before she awakened the Silver Dragon King's power, she finally understood why Chen Zhou had called her incomplete. Ever since she separated Nair, her strength had been stuck at 70%. No matter how she cultivated, that 30% gap was a black hole that blocked her return to full power. The lab's air seemed to grow thin and cold. Lights dimmed. The points of light in Guyue's eyes narrowed into a hard, determined focus. "Is there a third option?" she asked suddenly, her voice ringing with a metallic chill, the tone of the Silver Dragon King, a sound like dragon scales rubbing together. Chen Zhou's mouth curved. He tossed the box lightly. A robotic arm caught it before it hit the floor. "There is." How interesting, he thought. How deliciously inconvenient. The mischief in him, usually buried beneath indifference, flickered to life. "The third option," he murmured. "I'll give you a chance. You and your people leave my territory and go back to your little games. Win every place in that young man's heart. Isn't that what you want?" He appeared behind her like a tempting shadow, a devil whispering. "Win the bet as a human, legally reclaim your clone, and put on a farewell worthy of legend. Or," he added, voice light, "you can gather righteous allies and come try to defeat me, the grand villain. How about it?" Guyue's hair lifted with the rhythm of her breath. Chen Zhou's cold breath brushed her ear like a viper's tongue. The words struck like a knife, slicing through the fragile justifications she had built. Her voice choked, a weight pressed on her chest. Pride had never allowed the Silver Dragon King to bow to anyone, but now she hesitated over a single wager. "No, that's not a bet." She drew a breath, and the silver in her eyes flashed. The hesitant human vanished. In her place stood the decisive Silver Dragon King. "Nair is my clone, my power. I don't have time for these petty games." Chen Zhou raised an eyebrow, half surprised, half unsurprised. "Oh, so you've decided?" Guyue walked straight to the metal box. Her steps were steady, as if each footfall pressed down on a thread of fate. When her fingers brushed the box, silver scale patterns rose along her skin. "I will take it back," she said, "but not by force." Chen Zhou watched her with faint amusement. "Interesting. How do you plan to do it?" Her lips lifted into a smile that was unfamiliar, less girlish, more resolute. It carried both farewell and an awakening, the relief of shouldering responsibility. No need for theatrics, she said, her tone light and sharp as a sword. In the spirit beast world, the law is survival. I will correct the rebellion, set the order straight, and reclaim what's mine. Something like approval flickered in Chen Zhou's eyes. This was the Silver Dragon King he had been waiting to see. Flawed, emotional, bound by origins, an existence that could not so easily root itself here. And if she doesn't want to? He asked, each word probing deeper. The question rattled through Guyue. Nair wasn't just an alternate personality. She was the thread linking Guyu to this world, the human part of her. Images rose in Guyu's mind. Special training in Class 5 at EC Academy, relying on one another during promotion, life and death moments on the Spirit Ascension platform, and Tang Wulin, the boy who had started as a mere stake in a bet and slowly, inexorably eroded her defenses. She still didn't know if her feelings were the pull of the Golden Dragon King's bloodline within him or a real human bond. If she refused, Guye decided she would not accept it. If she doesn't want to, then I will make her understand. Her voice hardened like ice under the sun. Nair is my clone. I have the right to decide her fate, whether she realizes it or not. Chen Zhou clapped once, stepping back. A strange magic circle bloomed beneath their feet. A wash of white light wrapped them. When their eyes opened, they were in the Jishou Chamber of Commerce office. The moonlight outside was clearer, colder than before. Chen Zhou's expression returned to indifference. I look forward to your good news, he said calmly. Guye said nothing and left. Additional chapter updates for tomorrow. Popularity bonus 32310, plus 1 chapter. Average subscription bonus 4145. Not met, no bonus chapter. Reward bonus 176500. Not met, no bonus chapter. Still owe 17 chapters plus 3 basic chapters for a total of 21 chapters. Group number 3252747. Chapter 258. Humans. It's time to face the fury of the spirit beasts. My lord, forcing our way into Shrek Academy will be difficult. Would you like me to? Halosa had appeared beside Chen Zhou without him noticing, a shadow glued to his shoulder. Chen Zhou leaned back on the sofa, watching moonlight spill across the window, and said lightly, "Handle it yourself." Under the glow of the light screen, Guyue stepped out of the Jishou Chamber of Commerce building. In the moonlight, her silhouette wavered, then sharpened. An eagle gliding low through the night, brave and solitary. The tang of salt from the sea hung in the air as she turned Chen Zhou's words over in her mind. Nair is my clone. I have the right to control her fate, whether she realizes it or not. She repeated the sentence like a key turning in a lock, pushing back confusion. The anger and reluctance that had once plagued her were gone, replaced by a focused urgency. She was, by blood and title, a dragon, a noble silver dragon king, but human emotions had masked that truth. Now, after too many setbacks, she cast off that foreign shell. She became, in every sense that mattered, co-ruler of the Spirit Beast Clan again, the Silver Dragon King. DTN. Guyue's voice was soft, but her purple eyes carried a cold, sovereign light. The air twisted, and a tall black silhouette rose from the shadows behind her as if peeled from the night itself. My lord. Daitian knelt, his ink-black wings folded like a ceremonial cloak beneath the moon. The 890,000-year-old, golden-eyed Black Dragon King bowed his head, fury clenching behind his calm. What have humans done to you now? Guyu didn't turn. Her right hand, already half transformed by dragonification, moved as if taking hold of something. Silver motes spilled from between her fingers. Gather the fierce beasts and every 100,000-year spirit beast you can find. By dawn, I want to be at Shrek Academy. A cloud swallowed the moonlight. DTN's pupils constricted sharply. He felt the Silver Dragon King's power within his lord tearing at old shackles, the restrained pressure cutting into his skin like a blade. Even more alarming than the power was the order itself. This broke the Dragon King's old strategy of waiting, of patience measured generations long. Are you sure you want to strike into the human heartland? Are you deaf, or do you simply not understand me? Silver flames bloomed at Guyue's fingertips. She spoke each word again, every syllable steeped in ancient majesty. A mountain of pressure pressed down, bloodline authority, crushing and inevitable. Even DTN, godlike in strength, felt a spine-chilling cold as this primal law reached down from the soul. As you command. He bowed his head, cold sweat beaded on his forehead. Where her pupils had been there now glowed twin silver moons. The fierce beast's leader realized with a surge of exhilaration that this was no longer a girl playing at dragons. Standing before him now was the real Silver Dragon King, stripped of human pretense. When Dition dissipated into black mist, Guyu opened her palm. The silver flame shot up into a 3-foot column of light, and within it a holographic projection of the Stardew Great Forest's core flickered to life. Above Life Lake, streaks of spirit beast aura lit up like constellations, few in number, but each a living star. The forest had been ravaged, its breadth and beast population had dwindled toward extinction. The survivors, however, carried bloodlines of rare blessing. The night wind ran through the metal groves of East Sea City. Guyue stood on the rooftop edge, hair like a dark waterfall. She stared at the far horizon. Dragon shadows churned under her purple eyes. The hesitant girl who had wavered so recently now radiated an authority that made spirit beasts tremble in lairs 100 miles away. The Spirit Beast Clan has slept too long. She let her hand fall, a strand of hair drifting across her face. Below, in the top-floor office of the Ji-Shou chamber, Chen Zhou swirled crimson liquid in a crystal glass. He dragged a fingertip along the rim, and the wine clicked into ice, crystalline facets reflecting Guyue as she vanished into the night. So she's finally torn off that ridiculous disguise. Halosa stepped from the shadow. Shall I set spatial anchors in advance? The Human Federation's satellites have picked up energy anomalies near the Stardew Great Forest. Chen Zhou crushed the ice, and the fragments scattered into a miniature galaxy. No need. With the Star Luo Empire and the Dou Ling Empire launching a joint offensive, the Federation president will be buried in crises tonight. He flicked the crystalline shards toward the projection. What I'm more curious about is how those fence-sitters at the Spirit Transfer Pagoda will respond. On the projection, an old man in Tang garb argued with 3 indistinct figures, one of whom was Qianggu Dongfeng. They discussed unrest in the Stardew Great Forest when the screen suddenly drowned in blinding silver light. Tsk, we've been noticed. Chen Zhou closed the projection and turned to Halosa. Release Reconnaissance Unit 7. Time to try our new anti-spatial detection device. At Shrek Academy, a silver-haired girl meditating in the inner courtyard snapped her eyes open. Dragon sigils flared in her silver-gray irises. Pain ripped through her chest. Nair clutched at her heart and sank to her knees at the window, translucent scales creeping beneath her skin. Guyue? Is she finally going to reclaim me? Her soul tool communicator by the bed blinked with Tang Wulin's goodnight message. Nair reached a trembling fingertip toward the screen, but stopped short as an involuntary sting ran through her hand. Her fingertips were already partially dragonized, the clone being forcibly summoned by its core. A cold tear splashed down the back of her hand. Memories of Tang Wulin rolled through her mind like a lantern turning. The steamed buns he'd saved for her at the work-study dorm, his back shielding her on the Spirit Ascension platform, the fireworks by Sea God Lake. Brother, Wulin. She pressed the communicator to her chest as the scales climbed past her wrists. Just give me a little more time. Deep inside the Sea God Pavilion, a long alarm bell tolled, the signal for a major crisis. The first dragon roar split the night sky. Shrek City's defenses were only in their 3rd activation sequence when absolute darkness spread over the heavens. It had been far too long. 10,000 years ago, Shrek City had once stood helpless before the beast tide. Ever since that cursed Huo Yuhao appeared, the Spirit Beast Clan's child of destiny, the 3-eyed golden lion, forced into sacrifice, the fragile balance between humans and spirit beasts had been cut with the first blade. The Spirit Beast Clan had suffered too many winters. Most of them learned to smother the flames of righteous wrath beneath sleep and silence. But tonight, the fires were relighting. The sleeping were stirring. The spirit beasts had waited their whole lives for this moment. Humans, prepare yourselves. It is time to face the fury of the spirit beasts. Chapter 259, Hand Over Nair. Accompanied by whistling winds that echoed through the heights, the golden-eyed Black Dragon King descended. He was the patriarch of the Black Dragon Clan, one of the 9 great dragon kings, the head of the 10 great ferocious beasts of the continent, the ruler of the Stardew Great Forest, the king of spirit beasts, the dragon god's personal guard captain, DTN, arrived. Shrek City glittered in the night, but all its light was being swallowed by a more primordial power. A pitch-black rift, 100 li wide, tore open the sky. DTN's true form unfolded between void and reality, his dragon wings spreading out and whipping the air. The pressure from those wings sent ripples through the city's protective shield. Humans. His voice carried the weight of 890,000 years of cultivation. In that same instant, every piece of glass in the city shattered to dust. People in the streets fell to their knees like a harvested field. Spirit masters under 5 rings went limp where they stood. In the Shrek City Defense Command Center, the commander of the Federal 7th Soul Guidance Legion crushed his communicator. All Soul Engineers to your positions. Activate every defensive array. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not. The floor-to-ceiling window of the command room suddenly reflected a presence that blotting out the night sky. Staff turned rigidly and saw, outside the glass, a golden dragon eye as large as a football field. Boring. DTN's voice shattered all the electronics in the room. His talons ripped the level 7 protective shield, supposedly strong enough to withstand a Super Douluo's assault, open like paper. 12 beams of light rose suddenly above the Sea God Pavilion. Changgu Dongfeng and the Spirit Transfer Pagoda's powerhouses broke through the air and arrived, only to freeze. Ferocious beasts from the core of the Stardew Great Forest had poured out, each at full strength. BG's Jade Swan true form spread a healing domain that enveloped the entire Spirit Beast host, while the myriad Demon Kings plant true form through blood-red vines across the city's outskirts for kilometers. Spirit Transfer Pagoda personnel, listen up. Changgu Dongfeng's forehead glistened with cold sweat. Immediately retreat. A silver bolt of lightning split the night. Gu Yue walked forward slowly, stepping on a staircase of spatial elements. With every step, a shimmering silver lotus bloomed beneath her feet. Her long hair had become liquid silver light. Crystalline dragon horns rose on her brow, and star-like patterns flowed across the great dragon wings unfurled behind her. Tower Master Changgu, are you all right? Her voice carried the resonance of many dragon roars. The sound waves alone made several titled Douluo of the pagoda spit blood. Changgu Dongfeng's face went white with shock. Isn't she Leng Yaoju's direct disciple? But this wasn't an ordinary disciple. He forced himself to summon the coiling dragon rod and stood fast against DTN's irresistible might. Tower Master Changgu, I came only for Shrek Academy today. Gu Yue's tone was calm. If the Spirit Transfer Pagoda withdraws now, I swear no harm will come to you. Changgu Dongfeng hesitated only a beat. Shrek Academy was one thing that would always draw him in. All Spirit Transfer Pagoda personnel, retreat to headquarters, he ordered without hesitation. He dismissed any thought about, if the lips are gone, the teeth will be cold. Whether his pagoda helped or not wouldn't change the fact that there were 4 limit Douluo in Shrek City besides his force. If the academy weren't involved, he wouldn't lift a finger. He'd rather pour a glass of wine and watch. But with Shrek Academy threatened, he chose to fall back. Heavy black clouds hung low, as if the sky itself were about to collapse. Above Shrek City, 1,000 defensive arrays flickered and glowed, but they could not dispel the suffocating pressure. Residents looked up to see an impenetrable darkness, intermittently lit by silver lightning that revealed mountain-sized black silhouettes, ferocious beasts streaking through the night. Deep inside the Sea God Pavilion, alarms wailed without stop. Tantai Jing gripped the core emblem of the War God Hall. His face was stone. Pass down the order. All Soul Engineer Legions enter combat readiness. All Sea God Pavilion members assemble. No sooner had he spoken than a blood-red light pillar, like hellfire, plunged from the sky and struck Shrek City's protective shield. The shock violently shook the entire Sea God Pavilion. The portraits of successive Academy Deans hanging on the walls cracked. It's the myriad Demon King's demonic spirit true body, an elder of the pavilion shouted. Stop him, now! A brilliant silver-white light erupted from the student dormitories in Shrek Academy's inner court. A figure burst through a roof and hovered in midair, silver hair whipped by the energy storm, azure eyes fixed on the distant silver silhouette above. Gu Yue! Tang Wulin cried out, alarmed. He saw her, the silver figure standing before the massive black dragon. Guyo, the girl who had been his classmate at East Sea Academy for 5 years, the partner who had fought beside him in the promotion competition, now leading an overwhelming host of spirit beasts and descending on Shrek City. His hand flew to his chest as a sudden pain and resonance ran through him. Something in his bloodline trembled. The first of the 18 Golden Dragon King seals hidden in his heart began to shudder violently. As if sensing that tremor, the silver figure up above turned her face. Even from 1,000 meters away, Tang Wulin saw those eyes, no longer human, entirely dragon eyes, ancient, alien, and unbearably majestic. This isn't Guyu. The realization struck him like a blade. The silver figure's gaze slid away as if he were nothing but a stray passerby. Silver lightning carved sharp lines through the air, fragmenting the sky into countless shards. The silver form in the heavens hung like a cold moon, looking down on the tiny human city below. Her voice rolled like thunder and brooked no refusal. Hand over Nair. Yunming's expression hardened. He raised the Qingqian divine spear and prepared for battle. Nair was his direct disciple, his daughter in every way but blood. How could he possibly hand her over? Fury and refusal flared in his eyes. Before he could act, a clear, cold voice answered from deep within the Sea God Pavilion. No need to look for me. I'm here. All eyes turned toward the pavilion roof. Nair stood at the top of the Sea God Pavilion, silver hair fluttering in the night wind, a turmoil of emotions flickering through her silver-gray eyes. She looked up at the silver dragon form, her hands clutching the hem of her clothes until her knuckles went white. Those watching from below could see faint silver scales emerging beneath her skin, a natural reaction whenever her true body resonated with its distant counterpart. Chapter 260, Shrek Academy is still so arrogant, brother. Nair turned toward Tang Wulin. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to speak, but in the end she simply shook her head. With a light leap she rose until she was level with Guyu, only 100 meters or so between them. Moonlight twisted and warped around the two of them, as if even space could not bear the clash of two Silver Dragon King wills. We had an agreement, Nair said, her eyes hard with resolve. Something in her felt unfamiliar, but the bloodline in her thrummed insistently. The Silver Dragon King should be like this. An agreement? That childish game, Guyu replied coldly. I don't want to play anymore. Nair glanced down at Tang Wulin, who was shouting her name from below. The tenderness in her gaze hardened into determination. I refuse. So this is your choice? Guyu's voice rolled across the night with an old, desolate chill. Abandon the pride of the Dragon Clan to drown in the false emotions of humans? Everything I've felt isn't false. Wulin, enough. A bolt of silver lightning cleaved the sky. Guyu's draconic wings spread wide. A vast ancient might thrummed through the air and made the ground of Shrek City tremble. What do you think you are? A free, independent individual? Her lips curved into something cruel. You were nothing but an experiment I separated to taste human emotion. It was only because you were me that I indulged you, she went on. But if I choose, I can simply reclaim you. Those words struck Nair like knives. The Silver Dragon King power inside her boiled and surged. The main body was trying to pull its shard back. Silver scales crawled up her skin toward her neck, like 1,000 tiny needles piercing flesh. No, it's not like that, she gasped, clamping her hand over her chest as a tearing pain flared. I can feel. Feel what? Guyu appeared beside her in a flash, pinching Nair's chin with cold, precise fingers. That cheap chemical impulse called love, or the vanity of being human. Chen Zhou watched from a distance and narrowed his eyes. When Guyu spoke, her fingers trembled for the briefest moment, evidence that even after shedding a human guise, traces of it clung. The sight of Tang Wulin, the Golden Dragon King bloodline, their shared past, those things nudged at something inside Guyu. For an instant, something like hesitation flickered over her, but it vanished. Her face hardened. It doesn't matter if I keep you, she said softly. The Golden Dragon King's blood will make me whole. No, don't, Nair thrashed, silver light surging outward like a tide. You can't hurt Wulin. Guyu watched her struggles with indifferent contempt. Haven't you realized? We've always been one. The stronger your emotions, the more complete the fusion will be when you return. Ditian's roar rolled through the clouds. Tens of thousands of spirit beasts answered in a deafening chorus. The shockwave shattered one-third of Shrek City's outer ring and sent debris raining onto the streets. Master! DTN dove down and shifted into human form. Human Federation reinforcements will arrive in 3 minutes. Guyue's hand closed over Nair's chest. Then let's finish this. Stop! Yunming's voice thundered through the night as the heaven-supporting spear flashed. His dark hair whipped like a banner in the turbulence of dragon might. The Sea God Pavilion Master rode a white arc into the sky. The Qingqian Divine Spear sliced a clean white through the darkness. For a moment, it cleaved the gloom. Then 9 black dragon shadows erupted from the void around him, locking him in place. DTN's black dragon sword domain pinned Yunming mid-air like 9 massive wedges. Your opponent is me, human, DTN said. His golden pupils burned in the dark as he summoned a colossal sword forged of shadow. If the master reclaims what belongs to us, any disturbance is a declaration of war. At the same instant, Guyue's hand touched Nair's chest. Silver runes exploded from the point of contact and arranged themselves into an immaculate Dragon Clan array. Nair's body began to turn translucent. She tried to look down. Tang Wulin was being held back by the Shrek 7 devils. Veins stood out on his forehead. Brilliant golden light flared from his heart as the Golden Dragon King's seal fought to hold its ground. Nair! His roar cracked the air and echoed like thunder, stirring the heavens. Guyue tilted her head almost idly. Another seal breaking, she murmured, and the silver light at her fingertips quickened, accelerating the absorption. Nair's hair drifted like smoke, her form becoming half spirit. Then, impossibly, a ripple of black light tore space itself. It sliced cleanly between Guyue and Nair. Guyue was thrown back 100 meters. A long, white-boned wound split her palm, and blood fell in heavy, incandescent beads into the night, each drop smashing into buildings below with the force of a meteor. Lost dog, I thought you had completely disappeared, a cold voice said. A black-robed figure had appeared at the edge of the battlefield. Cao Deji, the Tang sect master, casually flicking blood from his sword. His eyes were ruthless with killing intent. After the turmoil in the Tang sect, he had withdrawn from the Blood God Legion to shore up the sect's headquarters. Encountering this now, he would not stand aside. Soul Beast Clan, since you're here, don't leave. Longye's voice rang out as the auras of the Holy Light Dragon and the Holy Dark Dragon flowed around him. A twin spirit can only call one beast at a time, but Longye had long been immersed in both, and the combined presence suppressed the surrounding spirit beasts for a moment. It's been thousands of years since the last beast tied. Lucky to witness one now, he said. Zhang Xin rose into the air with his sword, 4-limit Douluo, 2 of them near god level in strength. Whether the Spirit Transfer Pagoda would join this battle or not, the combined forces of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, in terms of spirit masters, could almost sweep the entire Douluo plain. A faint whisper drifted across the battlefield from somewhere beyond sight, light as breath, cold enough to chill the bone. Shrek Academy is still so arrogant.